Chapter 435. He transferred to another flying artifact that was on alert. The items in his storage bag had already been sorted out. After listening to the report, Xianxia realized that there were very few valuable things. The total number of spirit stones was less than 70 million high-grade spirit stones. Just the storage bag that contained the treasure chest alone had close to 60 million. In other words, the other storage bags didn't even add up to 10 million. Xianxia was a little depressed. It turned out that there weren't many rich people in the cultivation world. Seeing Ze hiding in a corner and guarding the chest with her head lowered in deep thought, he walked over and asked, "Which two countries are missing inside?" Ze just realized that he was back and said with some embarrassment, "There's no one in China, but I can't remember which country it is." "Don't make things difficult for yourself if you can't remember." Xianxia comforted her. Actually, he also knew that there were more than 300 countries. Perhaps everyone knew the names, but not many people could name them one by one. However, there was one thing without a doubt. Although the map of China wasn't in the chest, the things inside were definitely not made by the people of China's cultivation world. It seemed like he had to check the foreign cultivators and find out which country's important people had died in this battle. Ordinary people wouldn't carry such a storage bag. After putting the chest away, Xianxia returned to his flying artifact and gave the order to set off. Their target was the Wu family of the four major families. After the various sects saw the four flying artifacts leave, they quickly sent the news of Xianxia leaving the Cultivation Alliance back to their sections. Then they went back to their own matters. After all, the most important thing at the moment was the battle with Wuxia Island. The only thing that everyone was concerned about was what the Daoist sect would do to Xianxia. No sect would let over 1,000 people die in vain. The four major families had already received the news that Xianxia was coming. The four family heads gathered at the Wu family. It was not convenient for Xianxia to teleport here with Ze, so he could only fly over. When they were not far from the Wu family, they found a secluded mountain and sent Purple Robe away. They temporarily sent the 400-odd team members back to Utopia and put away the four flying magical artifacts. Then they gathered some firewood and piled it up. When Ze came back with two wild animals that Xianxia wanted to eat, she realized that the flying artifact and the people were gone. She asked curiously, "Where did they go?" Xianxia took the two pheasants and came to a small stream. He removed their feathers and gutted them. As he washed them, he told Ze, "I'll dismiss them first. I'll gather them again when I need them. Otherwise, I would have to pay a large sum of money to them every day. I can't take it." After all, Ze had been out for a long time. Her way of thinking was more or less enlightened. She wasn't as easy to guess as she used to be. After looking around, she said doubtfully, "I wasn't far from here just now. Why didn't I notice anything when so many people left?" "They have their own stealth methods. Ordinary people can't discover them," Xianxia said perfunctorily. This explanation was a little far-fetched. With Ze's cultivation, it was impossible for her not to notice such a huge commotion. Ze's pretty face turned cold. She asked unhappily, "Xianxia, are you hiding many things from me? What can I hide from you? What benefits do I get from hiding them from you?" Xianxia said without revealing any flaws. He carried the two bare-chested pheasants and walked to the pile of firewood that he had prepared. With a point of his finger he started a fire. He took out a few metal skewers and stabbed the pheasants over the fire to roast them. He then took out a bunch of seasonings and started serving them slowly. Ze pouted her lips and stood far away. Xianxia sat on top of a rock, concentrating on taking care of the two chickens. He brought out his barbecue skills to the extreme. After waiting for a while, a rich aroma of meat filled the air. Ze's nose flared. She couldn't help but occasionally look over. Xianxia smiled and did not say anything. He waited until the two pheasants were golden yellow in color and most of the fat was gone. The fragrance lingered and did not dissipate. Then he put out the fire. He raised the two roasted pheasants in his hands and smiled. "Ze, come and have a taste. My cooking skills are top-notch. I guarantee that you will never forget it after you eat it." Ze wanted to remain silent to express her protest. However, to her dismay, she discovered that the saliva in her mouth increased. After she swallowed it with difficulty, she walked over casually. She did not even look at him. It seemed like she was not interested in the roasted pheasants. "You little gluttonous cat, playing this game with me?" The corner of Xianxia's mouth curled up into a smile. He stuck one into the ground beside him and took a bite of the other roasted pheasant. After chewing a few times he mumbled, "Delicious, delicious." Zi turned her head and saw him tear off a layer of yellow and glossy pastry and put it into his mouth. Then he smacked his lips and revealed an intoxicated expression. Zi immediately walked over without saying anything. She grabbed the metal skewer and pulled out the other pheasant. Then she sat back to back with Yu Qianchou and opened her mouth to take a bite. Yu Qianchou finished eating first. He stood up and threw away the food in his hands. Water flowed between his hands and removed the oil stains. Zi placed her hands behind her back and turned to look at the little gluttonous cat. She ignored her ladylike demeanor and hugged the pheasant with her hands. After Zi finished eating with satisfaction, Yu Qianchou smiled and said, "Give me your hands." Zi stretched out her 2 hands in astonishment. When she saw the oil stains on her hands, she immediately stuck out her little red tongue. Suddenly, a wriggling little water dragon swam over and filled her 10 slender fingers, helping her get rid of the oil stains. The feeling of being touched by water was really comfortable. She looked at Yu Qianchou with delight. However, she heard Yu Qianchou smile and say, "Pucker up your mouth." Zi obediently did as she was told. Once again she saw a little water dragon come over to help her clean the oil stains on her mouth and face. After the cleanliness, Zi widened her eyes and said, "It's delicious. You can roast it for me in the future." Yu Qianchou nodded and smiled. "All right. However, let's make a trip to the Wu clan first." The barrier between them disappeared, and the 2 of them quickly flew towards the Wu clan. This time, Yu Qianchou visited the Wu clan secretly. He didn't openly pass through the crowded Hat Island. Instead, he alerted a guard at the periphery of the Wu clan and instructed him to inform Wu Sihai to make a trip over. When Wu Sihai received the news, he was rather astonished. He didn't know why Jiang Yi was acting so mysteriously. However, Jiang Yi reckoned that Jiang Yi didn't want too many people to know of his arrival. Jiang Yi cooperated and didn't alert anyone else. He only brought the other 3 clan heads over. The few of them met in a deep mountain forest outside of the Wu clan. The 4 clan heads wanted to see that group of rogue cultivators who were famous in the cultivation world, but they only saw 2 of them. They were a little regretful, but they didn't say anything. After exchanging conventional greetings, Yu Qianchou smiled indifferently and said, "I didn't come here for anything else. I just want to tell everyone that I will be making a trip back to the demon region. Previously, because I killed Wu Jinggang, I promised to bring Senior Wu Bao to meet my master. I hope the Wu clan can make arrangements now and ask Senior Wu Bao if he has the time to go with me." Zi was slightly startled. She only found out about Yu Qianchou's plan now. When she thought about meeting Senior Bai again, she was nervous and excited. The 4 clan heads looked at each other and were rather excited. After Wu Sihai's excitement, he got a little worried and couldn't help but ask, "Yu Qianchou, I wonder if Consecrator Wu Bao will be in danger after meeting the old ancestor. I am worried that the old ancestor—" He didn't finish his sentence, but everyone knew what he was worried about. It was obvious that he was afraid of infuriating the old ancestor, and Wu Bao might lose his life. Yu Qianchou shook his head and said, "It is useless for you to worry. You can't make the decision for this matter. Why don't you invite the Wu clan's 3 clan elders together and let them discuss it?" Wu Sihai nodded with a grave expression and said, "Wait for a moment, I will go invite the 3 clan elders immediately." After speaking, he quickly skimmed the sky and left. Chapter 436. When Wu Sihai returned, Wu Bao and the other 2 clan elders were nowhere to be seen. Wu Sihai's answer was that the 3 clan elders might have gone out, so they might not be able to visit the ancestor in the demon domain for the time being. The Bai, Jing, and Tan clan heads looked at each other thoughtfully, but didn't say anything. How could the 3 clan elders just disappear like that? It was more likely that they were afraid of meeting Bai Changchun. This was equivalent to indirectly telling Wu Lixue that they couldn't go. Yu Qianchou smiled coldly. "You're a supervillain. I'm really worried about letting you stay by Wu Lixue's side. I wanted to bring you to the demon domain and kill you, but you didn't want to go. You're smart enough to escape this disaster." Wu Sihai also shook his head awkwardly. No matter how tactful his words were, it was useless. They were not fools, so they naturally understood the twists and turns. He did see Wu Bao just now. When he heard that they were going to visit the ancestor, his expression changed again and again. Wu Bao gritted his teeth and agreed to come, but was stopped by Wu Zhen at the crucial moment. Wu Zhen only said one sentence. Wu Bao, I'm afraid you'll be in danger this time. After all, our surname is not Bai. Listen to me, let's end this matter here. The atmosphere between them was a little strange. Wu Sihai changed the topic. Yu Qianchou, aren't you going to see Shui heir? The matter between Wu Lixue and Yu Qianchou was no longer a secret among the upper echelons of the four clans, so he asked without hesitation. Among the people present, only Ziyi didn't understand what he meant. Yu Qianchou smiled faintly. I have my own way of contacting Shui heir. Saying so, he took out a porcelain bottle and a jade archive from his storage pouch and handed them to Wu Sihai, saying, Senior Wu, please send these two things to Baihua Ferry of Baihua Palace as soon as possible. He then took out a jade archive saying, there are some things recorded in here. There's no risk, please do as I say, Senior Wu. I'll do my best. Wu Sihai received the items and exchanged glances with the other three clan heads. He felt that Yu Qianchou was acting a little strange today, as if he had purposely come here to put an end to everything. For patriarchs, we shall meet again. Yu Qianchou cupped his hands at the four of them. A flying sword flew out from his sleeve and carried him away. A purple shadow followed behind him. The forest was quiet except for the occasional chirping of birds. The four of them looked at each other. High up in the sky, the two of them pierced through the clouds and mist. After Yu Qianchou's cultivation increased, his flying speed increased significantly. Ziyi tilted her head and kept looking at him. The crease between her brows showed that she was thinking about something. Ever since she got together with Yu Qianchou, she found that she couldn't figure out any of Yu Qianchou's behaviors. It was beyond her understanding. So she began to learn to think slowly so that she wouldn't always feel confused. But it was really hard to figure it out. The more he thought about it, the more confused he felt. The thing you gave to the Wu family's patriarch just now? What did you ask him to do for you? Ziyi sadly realized that she might really be a little stupid. She couldn't figure it out, so she could only ask. Just a small matter. Yu Qianchou answered perfunctorily. In his impression, this woman was a simple-minded person. Talking to her was just nonsense. She just needed to order her when she needed something. Liar. Ziyi protested strongly. Her pretty face turned cold again. Yu Qianchou chuckled, turned his head and said, Don't think about this first. Better think about what my master will ask you after you see him. But Ziyi suddenly panicked. She asked carefully, What will Senior Bai ask me? If he asks me what I've done, how am I supposed to answer him? Let me think. Yu Qianchou muttered to himself, After you came out, you seemed to eat more. You didn't do anything else, no? Ziyi yelled and interrupted, You can't say that I ate. But I can't lie to my master. Yu Qianchou frowned. Ziyi was stunned. She really couldn't lie to Senior Bai, whom she admired the most. Thinking about it carefully, he sadly realized that he seemed to eat more often. It seemed that as long as he was free, he would rarely stop eating. Then what should I do? Senior Bai asked me to help you with something, but I only cared about eating. If Senior Bai finds out about this, how will he look at me? Ziyi grabbed her hair and looked around blankly. She felt like she was about to collapse. She seemed to regret not being able to control her mouth. Will he kill me in anger? No. Ziyi said. Suddenly she yelled again, scaring Yu Qianchou. She stared at Yu Qianchou fiercely and said, You have to think of a way for me. Otherwise, don't think about returning to Obedient Island. Even if you want to go, you have to settle Senior Bai's matter first. Otherwise, no one can go back. You actually dare to threaten me? Believe it or not, I can strip you naked and set up a formation on the spot. Yu Qianchou was startled. In the end, he sighed and said, Forget it. Whatever my master asks you, just say that you don't know and push the blame onto me. When the time comes, my master will naturally ask me and not you. That's for the best. Ziyi's eyes lit up. Her face brightened up. But then she found Yu Qianchou looking at her with a strange expression. Ziyi suddenly realized that what she was doing was a little too selfish. She asked nervously, Can you bear it alone? Yu Qianchou immediately asked, How about I let you bear it? No. Ziyi waved her hand and said, You bear it. You are Senior Bai's disciple. He won't do anything to you. If he really wants to punish you, as long as I am fine, I will ask my master to plead for you. Don't worry. Damn it. Like father, like daughter. You are just like your father at the crucial moment. Yu Qianchou was speechless. The demon ghost region was filled with dense fog. All kinds of mournful cries could be heard from time to time. Not long after the two of them entered, some small demons and ghosts peeked at them. When they saw Yu Qianzhou's face, they quickly closed their drooling mouths and buried their heads in fear. The person who came was not someone they could covet. Shuntian Island. In the big house at the center of the island there was a mat on the floor. It was wiped clean by someone. Bai Changchun was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. He was quiet and peaceful. Beside him there was another person lying on his side. He was supporting his head with one hand and spinning a teacup with the other. Who else dared to be so unscrupulous around Bai Changchun? It was Mr. Nongzhu, the owner of the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea. The lid of the teacup buzzed and stopped. Two slender and fair fingers flicked on the surface of the teacup. Nongzhu raised her head out of boredom and asked, Bai Changchun, are you really sure that Yu Qianzhou can protect my daughter? Bai Changchun refused to answer this question, which had been asked hundreds of times. Ever since he returned from the South Sea, Nongzhu had been eagerly coming over and staying on Obedient Island ever since. He would ask the same question a few times a day, but he had never been seen seriously cultivating. Even Bai Changchun wondered how this guy had reached the middle stage of deification. Seeing that he did not answer, Nongzhu sat up and took out the flute from his waist. He asked, Bai Changchun, don't you feel bored sitting here all day? Do you want me to play a song for you? Bai Changchun abruptly opened his eyes and stared at the face that was right in front of him. He said in a low voice, if you continue to chatter like a woman, I don't mind crippling you for a few hundred years and sending you back to the soul formation initial stage. Nongzhu quickly retracted his head. Bai Changchun snorted and closed his eyes again. After a while he opened his eyes again and frowned. Why are they here? Their cultivation has improved again. Nongzhu jumped up and said excitedly, who is so stupid to break into your territory? He was bored to death after staying here for so long. Today he could finally see what was going on. Your baby daughter. Bai Changchun finally replied. What? He means he is back? When will she arrive? Nongzhu's handsome face twisted with excitement. He immediately released his divine sense and spread it around the demon ghost region. However, his cultivation was much lower than Bai Changchun's. He tried his best but still could not find Ze. But he was sure that it would take some time for his daughter to arrive if he could not find Ze with his divine sense. Yu Qianzhou and Ze crossed the 1,000 Miles Lake and landed on the island. Miss Mu also found them and was waiting for them on the island. Yu Qianzhou directly asked, is my master here? Lady Mu nodded slightly and looked enviously at the two of them leaving together. As soon as they entered the big house, they saw two masters sitting cross-legged on one side. At this time, Nongzhu had already concealed her sparse image and completely looked like a master. Yu Qianzhou and Ze were stunned at the same time. They did not expect Nongzhu to be here. They quickly saluted. Master. I'm back. Greetings, Senior Nongzhu. Greetings, Senior Bai. Greetings, Master. Bai Changchun nodded slightly and pointed to the front, indicating them to sit down. Nongzhu looked Ze up and down carefully. Her daughter should not have suffered any loss. Her face was slightly plump and she looked much better than before. Not bad, not bad. Nongzhu felt relieved. She looked at Yu Qianzhou again and felt that he was more pleasing to the eye. He should not mistreat his daughter outside. What's the matter? Bai Changchun asked. I miss you, Master. Yu Qianzhou said respectfully. Suddenly he found Nongzhu rolled her eyes disdainfully. He quickly added, secondly, I have something to report to Master. I have some plans and I want to ask for Master's permission first. On the other hand, Ze was trembling with fear. She was afraid that Bai Changchun would ask her some questions. Nongzhu looked at Bai Changchun discontentedly. The atmosphere was so serious that my daughter was scared like this. Chapter 437. You don't need to ask for my opinion and I won't interfere with you. I don't care what you do as long as you achieve what I want in the end. Bai Changchun said, looking at his little disciple who was sitting obediently in front of him. Based on his experience of more than 2,000 years, Yu Qianzhou was just a little disciple. Hearing his words, Yu Qianzhou didn't feel anything but Ze was greatly relieved. It was good that Elder Bai didn't ask about it. I know. But, Master, I still have to tell you what I think or I won't be confident. Yu Qianzhou said. He thought to himself, The place I want to go has to be backed by this old guy. Before Bai Changchun answered, Nongzhu nodded repeatedly and said, "Say it, tell us all your ideas and let your master and I see if there is anything wrong." He was eager to know Yu Qianzhou's ideas. He had heard about this guy's bad reputation and he didn't know what was in his head. Usually he couldn't ask him even if he wanted to. It couldn't be better to hear him say it on his own initiative. After all, his daughter was always by his side and he couldn't be careless. In front of his master, Nongzhu didn't have the right to make decisions, and Bai Changchun didn't object. Yu Qianzhou thought for a while and said, "Master, to be honest, before I became your disciple, I didn't have a good reputation in the cultivation world of Wuxia, and I had a lot of enemies. This time, it was difficult for me to move forward in the cultivation world of Wuxia. I wanted to do my bit for the cultivation world of Wuxia, but I was always plotted against by various sects, and I couldn't do what you asked me to do. I'm really ashamed." Before he finished speaking, he saw Nongzhu laughing happily. She looked at Yu Qianzhou with her eyes as if saying, "So, you also know that you have a bad reputation." Bai Changchun slightly raised his eyebrows and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "They plotted against you and you didn't have any tricks? Humph. If you have suffered a loss and deliberately came to me to complain, then don't say any more. I can't afford to lose my face." The meaning of his words was clearly saying, if someone hit you, don't you know to hit back? The smile on Nongzhu's face froze. The master was so strong that even the way he taught his apprentice was so strong. It was obvious that whoever bullied you, you should bully them back. Bai Changchun was indeed worthy of his name. Startled for a moment, he immediately said to his daughter, "See, Elder Bai's words are priceless advice, you must remember them well." Actually, even without his instruction, Zi had already regarded Bai Changchun's every word and action as a rule. She nodded repeatedly and said, "I will remember." Yu Qianzhou respectfully said, "What teacher said makes sense. After disciple joined the Cultivation Alliance, I did the same thing. That's why I had a conflict with the Dalu sect, which is ranked second among the righteous sections. In the end, the disciple lost more than 200 subordinates while the Daluo sect lost more than 1,000 people. No one gained any advantage in the conflict. Instead, the Wuxia Cultivation Alliance was weakened and the foreign cultivators gained the upper hand. I want to... Wait." Nongzhu stopped him. She looked at Zi up and down again and said, "So many people died and the matter became so big? There are many cultivators in the Daluo sect at the final stage of the nature's test. Zi, are you okay? Damn it. It's not too late for you to say it after I'm done." Yu Qianzhou glanced at Nongzhu unhappily. It was not a good feeling to be interrupted in the middle of a conversation. "I'm fine," Zi replied. "Master, you don't know. The Daluo sect is so hateful. As soon as Yu Qianzhou and I arrived in the Wuxia cultivation world, the head of the Daluo sect came looking for trouble and fought with Yu Qianzhou. Humph. But he didn't know who taught Yu Qianzhou. In the end he lost an arm and came back with hatred. He deserved it. This guy killed his son. Of course he wants revenge." Nongzhu paused and said suspiciously, "The head of the Daluo sect is called Luo Qing'an. He seems to be at the middle stage of the nature's test. Zi, are you sure this guy defeated Luo Qingtian?" As far as she knew, although Yu Qianzhou's cultivation improved very quickly, he was still at the nascent soul stage. Bai Changchun didn't care. Healy was also at the middle stage of the nature's test, but he was still killed by Yu Qianzhou. But he didn't know that Healy had a high status in the demon ghost region. Usually no one dared to provoke him. He didn't have much combat experience and was not at the same level as Luo Qingtian. Nongzhu often wandered around in the outside world. Naturally, she knew this better than Bai Changchun. "Master, yes, it's that guy called Luo Qingtian. After he was defeated, he said that the grudge between the Daluo sect and Yu Qianzhou was written off. But after that he still allowed his disciples to provoke us. Not long ago in Wanghai town, 4 Daluo sect cultivators at the late stage of the nature's test led more than 1,000 disciples to fight with us. In the end, more than 1,000 disciples were almost killed by Yu Qianzhou's subordinates," Zi said with a smile. This was the nature of women. After finding someone to talk to, it was hard to stop talking. Nongzhu looked at Bai Changchun, who was calm. She turned around and asked, "Yu Qianzhou, where did you get so many subordinates? Did you bring people from the demon ghost region?" Yu Qianzhou just wanted to make up an excuse, but But Zi said first, we didn't bring them out of the demon ghost region. We spent money to hire thugs. We have been making money outside and then we spent money to hire thugs to help us. Why did she mention the matter of making money? Yu Qianqiu sweated profusely. He was almost stunned. Before coming here he deliberately mentioned Bai Chongqun to scare this one-track mind. He was afraid that she would talk nonsense. Who knew that once she started talking, even if he put a knife on her neck, she couldn't stop talking. It seemed that he had underestimated this woman's mouth. Spent money to hire thugs? Such a hooligan way of doing things. Well, that sounds like your style. Nongzhu laughed. If Zi didn't need to do anything, she wouldn't be in danger. He agreed with this approach. But then he thought it was not right, so he asked suspiciously again, Zi, you just said that there were 4 cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity. Did you spend money to hire them to be your thugs? Although the cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity were nothing in his eyes, he knew that they were already the top masters in the so-called cultivation world. They couldn't be hired with money. No, the strongest of the thugs we hired was only at the early stage of the passing calamity. As for the 4 cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity, Yu Qianqiu and I fought 2 each. Speaking of this, Zi looked at Nongzhu embarrassedly and said, I'm ashamed. I fought 2 at the same time but I couldn't win. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu beat the 2 cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity so hard that they couldn't fight back. If it weren't for the masters coming to stop him, I'm afraid that Yu Qianqiu would have killed them. Hearing this, not to mention Nongzhu, even Bai Chongqun looked at Yu Qianqiu in surprise. Nongzhu was stunned and said, Girl, are you talking in your sleep? She turned to look at Yu Qianqiu and said, Tell me what happened? They went too far and I couldn't help but get angry, so I went all out, Yu Qianqiu replied weakly. But I didn't expect that the cultivators at the last stage of the passing calamity would be so weak. I was lucky to win. Speaking of such a glorious deed, he was indeed proud of himself. But in front of these 2 masters, it was better to be humble. Bai Chongqun frowned slightly and slowly closed his eyes. Nongzhu couldn't stop laughing and said, Lucky, you used lucky really well. When your master was only at the early stage of the transforming spirit realm, he dared to challenge the masters at the last stage of the transforming spirit realm. Tut-tut. Like master like disciple. I've seen it today. There's no justice in this world. Elder Bai's disciple is naturally not an ordinary person. Zi peeped at Bai Chongqun and flattered him. Bai Chongqun frowned slightly again. No one knew what he was feeling at this time. Nongzhu was stunned. She had raised this daughter for so many years, but she had never flattered her. She didn't expect that she would flatter someone else in front of her for the first time. This was unbearable. Nongzhu's jealousy was suddenly overturned. She stared at Yu Qianqiu and said with jealousy in her mouth, Your master has a lot of contact with the old monster in the southern Ming Empire. Your master must have given you some spirit treasure. Show me what you used to defeat the 2 guys at the last stage of the Crossing Heavens test. That. Yu Qianqiu lamented in his heart. Zi was so talkative that she finally talked about something she shouldn't talk about. The black fire flying sword was made of the ghost fire of the netherworld. It could fool ordinary people, but it was very difficult to fool the 2 guys in front of him. Especially Bai Chongqun, he had seen the message left by the old guy in the 9th netherworld cave. What this and that? Are you afraid that I will rob your treasure? Show me. Nongzhu said very unhappily. She thought to herself, My daughter has flattered your master for the first time. I just want to see your treasure. Why are you complaining? When Yu Qianqiu was still hesitating, Nongzhu directly took action. Before Yu Qianqiu could react, he felt something around his waist. He looked down and found that the storage bag was gone. On the other hand, there was a storage bag in Nongzhu's hand. She was shaking it in confusion. It's over. It's exposed. Yu Qianqiu suddenly became silent. Brat, are you kidding me? Nongzhu held the storage bag and asked, Is it fun to hang an empty bag on your waist? I knew that you are not a good guy, but I didn't expect you to be so cautious. You actually hung an empty bag to fool people. Master, is there nothing in it? Zi asked curiously. He saw Yu Qianqiu put things in it every time. Just as she finished asking, her master threw the storage bag to her hand and let her see for herself. Zi used her divine sense to check it. It was empty. There was nothing in it. It was very clean. This should be the storage pouch. I know it. Zi tilted her head and asked, Yu Qianzhou, where are the things inside? Where did you hide them? Chapter 438. I'll hide it in your grandma's house. Why are you joining in the fun? Yu Qianzhou was really speechless. His storage bag was just for show. Everything was taken and placed in Utopia through this bag. Who would go through his storage bag normally? It was only because of Nongzhu, who was so unreasonable that she took it without being asked. He had to take revenge. Yu Qianzhou made up his mind and said with a look of sudden realization, Senior Nongzhu, I almost forgot something. Someone asked me to ask you a question. Nongzhu chuckled. Trying to change the topic? Among the people you know, who else knows me? Old thing. Don't regret it. Yu Qianzhou was overjoyed, but he put on a serious face and said, Someone told me to ask you if you know someone called Xiaoyao. Nongzhu's teasing smile froze on her face. She probably wouldn't be able to recover in a while. Bai Changchun opened his eyes and glanced at the father and daughter with a strange expression. Then he closed his eyes again as if he didn't hear anything. After a long time, Nongzhu looked at Ziyi, who was staring at her with a guilty conscience. She coughed and said, Yu Qianzhou, who told you to ask me? It's Fairy Qianghua, the leader of the Moon Clan, which is ranked 3rd in the Wuxia cultivation world. She asked me to ask you. Do you know her? Yu Qianzhou said seriously. However, the smugness in his eyes was caught by Nongzhu. Nongzhu's face darkened. She asked Ziyi, Have you seen the leader too? Yes, that woman is very annoying. But she's quite generous and gave us a lot of spirit stones. Ziyi smiled. Since she gave you spirit stones, how can you talk bad about her behind her back? Nongzhu reprimanded. However, he heaved a sigh of relief. It was clear that Yu Qianzhou knew something, but Ziyi was still in the dark. Ziyi stuck out her red tongue and quickly shut up. Master rarely reprimanded her like this. Nongzhu stared at Yu Qianzhou coldly and said in a low voice, I don't know any Xiaoyao. Don't ask me such questions in the future. I hate it when people ask me boring questions. If there's a next time, I'll break your legs. At that time, even your master won't be able to protect you. The warning in his words was very strong. Yu Qianzhou nodded in agreement. After what he had done, the other party would probably back off and not make things difficult for him anymore. However, Yu Qianzhou's plan was wrong. Nongzhu was apparently not afraid of his threat. She said indifferently, Cut the crap. Take out your treasure. If you continue to hide it, I will strip you naked and search for it. It seemed that she wanted to catch Yu Qianzhou and take revenge on him. Yu Qianzhou's face twitched. He thought to himself, Fine, you are so cruel. When I bring Qianghua Fairy to the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea, I will definitely let you reunite with your wife and have fun. To be honest, Senior Nongzhu, I really don't have any treasure. The so-called treasure is just a way to condense fire under the guidance of my master. It can fool others, but it's not elegant in front of you. Yu Qianzhou said with a bitter smile. Condense fire? What kind of magic art is that? I've never seen your master use it. Come on, show it to me and see if you can fool me. Nongzhu suddenly became interested. Ziyi had been with Yu Qianzhou for a long time, but it was the first time she heard this. Her face turned cold. She gave Yu Qianzhou 2 words in her heart. Liar. How dare I show off in front of you? You don't have to, right? Cut the crap. Hurry up. Yu Qianzhou scratched his head. Under the gaze of the father and daughter, he stretched out his palm. In the room, a green shadow was shining. A green fire was ignited in Yu Qianzhou's palm, and it started to spin rapidly. As the fire gradually grew smaller, the misty green light in the room disappeared, and a green flying sword floated above his palm. Bai Changchun didn't care about it at all. He knew when Yu Qianzhou practiced this magic art. Ziyi was stunned. It turned out that Yu Qianzhou's flying sword was condensed by fire. No wonder his sleeve was like a storage bag and he could summon a flying sword just by waving his hand. Hehe. Interesting. Nongzhu raised her hand and took the green flying sword into her hand. She flicked the sword with her slender fingers, and the sound of metal clanking could be heard. She couldn't help but exclaim, Thousands of magic arts, endless and endless. It's really magical, really magical. Ziyi tilted her head and looked at it for a while. Suddenly she frowned and said, Yu Qianzhou, you didn't use a green flying sword to defeat the 2 cultivators at the end of the nature test stage. What I saw was clearly a black flying sword. Could it be condensed from black flames? She didn't know what the green fire and black fire meant. She just thought that the green fire could condense into a green flying sword, and the black flying sword must be condensed by black fire. Black fire? Nongzhu was shocked and stared at Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. Even Bai Chongqun opened his eyes instantly. His eyes were as sharp as a knife, piercing Yu Qianqiu's body. Damn it! You bitch, you win. Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered and he felt extremely guilty. He didn't know what would happen if he hid this from Bai Chongqun, so he quickly thought about how to deal with it. You can hide the black fire in your body? Bai Chongqun asked word by word. Nongzhu looked at him in surprise and asked, Old Bai, don't you know? According to his deduction, if Yu Qianqiu could subdue the black fire as his disciple, then Bai Chongqun as his master, could naturally do it too. If so, didn't Bai Chongqun have the ability to cross the sea of netherworld fire and open the gate to the underworld with his flesh and blood? But it seemed that even he didn't know about his disciple. Ziyi looked at the two masters' faces. She didn't expect that her words could make them react so strongly. After thinking for a while, she was also surprised. She remembered that her master had told her about the three true fire. If Yu Qianqiu really had the black fire, wouldn't it be the legendary black fire that ranked second in the three true fire? Thinking about it, she was also shocked. It was the legendary netherworld ghost fire that guarded the gate to the underworld. It was the barrier that separated the human world and the underworld. How could Yu Qianqiu have the black fire? Yes, master. Yu Qianqiu stammered, but he had a countermeasure in his heart. He was relieved. Nongzhu knocked on the Xian flying sword in her hand and said in surprise, You mean you can carry the netherworld ghost fire like the Xian fire? Think so. Yu Qianqiu continued to be vague. Yu Qianqiu, don't scare me. What do you mean by I think so? Don't make fun of me and your master. Yes means yes, no means no. Nongzhu asked with her eyes wide open. Bai Chongqun also stared at his disciple with a burning gaze and said, Release your black flame and let me see. Since master has said so, this disciple will do as you say. Yu Qianqiu stood up and bowed to the two. Bai Chongqun and Nongzhu stood up at the same time and slowly stepped back. They looked serious as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Seeing her daughter still sitting beside Yu Qianqiu, Nongzhu immediately shouted, See, come to my back. You can't bear the power of the black fire. Ziyi frowned and thought, Is it so terrible? I have seen it before and the black fire flying sword is not so powerful. Although she thought about it, she still stood up and hurried to her master's back. Bai Chongqun nodded and said, Let's start. Yu Qianqiu bowed again and started to use the fire incantation quietly. The three suddenly found that Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly became as dark as ink, and a strange black fire appeared in each of his eyes. Then they heard a light buzz. In the blink of an eye, Yu Qianqiu had been wrapped by a black fire. Although it was strange, it didn't make people feel that it was very powerful. Bai Chongqun and Nongzhu looked at each other with some doubts in their eyes. Ziyi looked at the two elders and then walked to Yu Qianqiu. She looked at the black fire curiously and asked, Yu Qianqiu, is this the legendary netherworld ghost fire? I don't think it's that good. Nongzhu turned her head and said, Old Bai, didn't you say that you had stayed in front of the netherworld fire? Let's see if it's true or not. It looks like it, but it doesn't have the power of the netherworld ghost fire. Bai Chongqun frowned. That's strange. Nongzhu shouted to Yu Qianqiu, Boy, you didn't make a fake thing to scare people, did you? This is my trump card at the critical moment and it's the first time I show it to people. How dare you doubt the power of my trump card? Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said to Bai Chongqun respectfully, Master, I have restrained the power of the black fire. If you want to see it, I can release it at any time. Good. Release it and see. Bai Chongqun said without hesitation. Nongzhu shouted again, See, come back. Ziyi didn't care about the two old guys' shock and thought, There's nothing to be afraid of. She couldn't disobey her master, so she walked back slowly. Yu Qianqiu glanced at her and thought, You talk too much. I'll teach you a lesson today. A ghastly and cold aura burst out from Yu Qianqiu's body in an instant. All kinds of extreme negative aura such as despair, desolation, loneliness, brutality and death had filled the whole room in an instant, making people feel like they were falling into the sea of bitterness and unable to escape. Bai Chongqun and Nongzhu's pupils suddenly shrank. Bai Chongqun even shouted, Yes, it's the netherworld ghost fire. At this time Yu Qianqiu, wrapped in the black fire and all kinds of extreme aura, came to the human world like a messenger of the underworld. He wanted to trample on happiness and spread the glory of the god of death. Under Yu Qianchou's deliberate obstruction, Zi in the hall shuddered again and again. She was originally walking toward her master, but she suddenly stopped. She was on the verge of collapsing and her mind became absent-minded. His body and mind were immersed in endless sorrow. He thought about his parents whom he had never seen before. Why did his parents abandon him when he was born? If even his parents abandoned him, then what was the point of him living? It was better to die. Chapter 439. An endless stream of negative emotions silently descended upon Zi. Furthermore, she was completely defenseless. Even though Ziyi's cultivation was at the end of the tribulation passing stage, her mental state was on the verge of collapse. She even had the thought of suicide. For people like Bai Chongqun and Nongzhu, their divine sense was as strong as steel and their psyche power was very strong. The negative emotions were not enough to affect them. However, the chill that went deep into their bones forced them to use their cultivation to resist it. Bai Chongqun was fine. Firstly, his cultivation was very strong. Secondly, he had been to the Sea of Netherworld fire, so he was not surprised. Nongzhu was shocked. It was not that she could not resist it, but for the first time she found that the Netherworld ghost fire was not hot. It was the other extreme of the fire that she knew. It was extremely cold, which could not be measured by the common sense of the human world. The two masters were looking at Yu Qianchou. Suddenly they found that Zi was lying on the ground. Nongzhu exclaimed, "Zi, what happened to you?" She threw away the green flying sword in her hand. He teleported to Zi quickly and helped her up. While he was distracted, all kinds of extreme negative emotions quickly invaded his mind. Nongzhu was shocked and quickly dispelled the evil thoughts. "Put away the black fire." Bai Chongqun shouted. Yu Qianchou did not dare to hesitate. He quickly put away the black fire and the green flying sword that Nongzhu threw away. The gloomy atmosphere in the room quickly disappeared, and the low temperature dissipated. Nongzhu held Zi up and pointed two fingers. A dazzling silver light appeared on her fingertips, which illuminated the whole room. Then she pointed between Ziyi's eyebrows. The silver light was slowly injected into Ziyi's body. Ziyi's whole body was suddenly covered with a misty white light. Yu Qianchou did not understand what it was, but Bai Chongqun shook his head slightly. Nongzhu really loved her daughter. She injected 10 years of cultivation into her daughter's body without any hesitation. 10 years of cultivation of a cultivator in the middle stage of the divine transformation realm was equivalent to 100 years of cultivation of Zi. Zi slowly woke up and saw her master hugging her. She shivered and her teeth trembled as she said, "Master, disciple is so cold. Am I going to die?" "Nonsense. I will drive the cold away for you." Nongzhu's eyes turned red in an instant. With a muffled hum, her body suddenly emitted a dense white flame, wrapping Zi in her arms. Ziyi's tense body gradually relaxed, and her face began to regain color. She was so comfortable that she fell asleep. Bai Chongqun frowned and shouted, "Nongzhu, that's enough. Zi is fine. You don't need to burn your cultivation to drive her away." Yu Qianchou was wondering if this was the legendary human fire that could be released by someone with high cultivation. After hearing Bai Chongqun's words, he was shocked. Nongzhu was actually burning her cultivation. Oh my! She was going to punish him later. Nongzhu turned a deaf ear to him and was still burning her cultivation to give her beloved daughter careful care. Bai Chongqun flicked Nongzhu's back with a white light. The human fire on Nongzhu's body at the cost of her cultivation was immediately extinguished. Bai Chongqun waved his palm and slapped in the air. A strong momentum rushed out and directly shook Nongzhu to one side. "Old Bai, what are you doing?" Nongzhu immediately got up and shouted. Bai Chongqun ignored him. He raised his hand and formed 5 claws. Zi, who was lying on the ground, slowly floated up and moved towards Bai Chongqun. Her head touched the 5 claws, and 5 wisps of golden qi entered Ziyi's head from the claws. Immediately, Ziyi let out a moan and opened her eyes. Nongzhu's face lit up and she ran over happily. Bai Chongqun waved his palm faintly, and the purple robe spun as he gently stood on the ground. He looked around in confusion and asked, "What happened to me just now? Is she all right?" Nongzhu asked worriedly. Bai Chongqun snorted coldly and said, "It's just an external evil invading the body. Just dispel it. Is there a need to make such a fuss?" "Huh. That's good, that's good." Nongzhu laughed and returned to normal in a blink of an eye, as if nothing had happened. However, the way he looked at Yu Qianqiu seemed to be harboring evil intentions. Bai Chongqun waved his hand and pushed Nongzhu away. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked, "Have you been to the 9th Netherworld cave?" "I went there out of curiosity." Yu Qianqiu answered honestly. He almost made a big mistake just now. He did not expect the black fire to be so powerful. Ze, who was in the last phase of the heavens test, was so weak in front of the black fire. "With your cultivation, can you break into the 9th Netherworld cave?" Bai Chongqun frowned. "Is it the 9th Netherworld cave?" "Senior Bai, I can prove that he did go in there. I went with him." Ze recovered and walked over to testify. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. "How come I don't remember going in there with you?" Bai Chongqun and Nongzhu looked at each other. Nongzhu said seriously, "Ze, don't talk nonsense. With your cultivation, how can you enter the 9th Netherworld cave?" Ze hurriedly explained, "No, when I left the demon region with Yu Qianqiu last time we went there. I was outside and did not go in, but I saw him go in with my own eyes. He stayed there for a long time." Yu Qianqiu was happy. He was afraid that Bai Chongqun would think that he deliberately did not report it. Now that Ze said it, it could be explained. It was not that he did not want to tell her, but he did not come back until now. That was why he did not tell her. He guessed right. Although Bai Chongqun did not care whether he could have the black fire or not, he suspected that he deliberately did not say it. Now that Ze said it, he felt a little relieved. "With your cultivation, can you enter the Sea of Netherworld fire?" Bai Chongqun asked. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. "To tell you the truth, I was curious and wanted to see what the legendary 9th Netherworld cave looked like. Who knew that it was so dangerous inside? After I went in, it was difficult to come out. But I accidentally found that the green fire on me could restrain the chilly wind and evil spirit in the cave, so I went in." Nongzhu clicked her tongue and exclaimed, "You're really bold. You actually entered the 9th Nether cave just because of a moment of curiosity?" There was something in his heart that he didn't say out. "Even I dare not go deep into the end. Even if you can go there with your cultivation, it is impossible to go through the eye of the wind. How did you go there?" Bai Chongqun asked coldly. He had high expectations for Yu Qianqiu, but he would not allow him to use his expectations to deceive him. So, how could he entrust the position of the Demon Region torture envoy to him in the future? It was better to kill him on the spot, lest he entrusted it to the wrong person. Nongzhu was someone who knew Bai Chongqun well. She immediately felt the killing intent in his words and could not help but be secretly shocked. He did not say a word. Yu Qianqiu acutely noticed this and his back broke out in cold sweat. His divine sense quickly locked onto Utopia. If he found anything wrong, he would escape immediately. However, he still scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. "I'm afraid people will laugh at my method. I really can't go there, so I used a stupid method. I dug a tunnel under the eye of the wind and went in just like that." "What? You dug a tunnel in the 9th Netherworld cave?" Nongzhu did not want to speak anymore, but she could not help but say something when she heard such a ridiculous thing. In fact, he had entered the 9th Netherworld cave before, but he could not go through the eye of the wind. Bai Chongqun was stunned as well and said, "It's all solid netherworld metal inside. How can you dig a tunnel?" "Hehe. Master might not know, but my green fire flying sword is quite sharp. It is not difficult to dig a tunnel in the netherworld metal. However, I did not expect to see masters." Yu Qianqiu chuckled and did not continue. Nongzhu asked curiously, "What did you see about your master?" Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said with a tight-lipped look, "Nothing much, just a few words." When he said that, Nongzhu was even more curious. She turned her head and said, "Old Bai, what words did you leave inside?" Bai Chongqun could not be bothered with him and continued to ask, "Since you have seen the words I left behind with the profoundness of your fire technique, I believe the Netherworld Fire Sea cannot stop you. Did you see what is behind the Netherworld Fire Sea?" Nongzhu's eyes lit up and stared at Yu Qianqiu. Until now, she had never heard of anyone being able to pass through the Netherworld Fire Sea. She had never heard of the situation behind. Could this brat really be the first? "I am quite curious. When I got there, I could not help but go and have a look. I did go there, but I did not find anything interesting behind." Yu Qianqiu thought for a while and said, "There is a huge netherworld metal mountain wall, on which there are many skulls of different sizes carved. There is also a huge door. Other than that, I did not see anything good." The Netherworld Gate. Bai Chongqun and Nongzhu were shocked at the same time. The former slowly closed his eyes and sighed softly. He didn't expect that his disciple would stupidly barge into the place that he failed to enter. Zi looked at Yu Qianzhou eagerly and felt annoyed. He had been to such an interesting place but he had never told me about it. What a liar. Nongzhu rubbed her hands excitedly and said, Yu Qianzhou, although I do not dare to say that you are the first person in history, you are definitely the only person in the cultivation world who has played in front of the Netherworld Gate. I Nongzhu admire you. Senior Nongzhu, what is so interesting about that place? It is full of ghosts. Yu Qianzhou looked disdainful and deliberately acted cool. Nongzhu opened her mouth and was speechless. She realized that she had no common language with this lunatic. She waved her hand and said, Don't interrupt me. Tell me, what does the Netherworld Gate look like? Nothing much. The gate is very tall and big and there are many expressions of happiness, anger, sadness and happiness carved on it. Yu Qianzhou said as he slapped his forehead and said, That's right, there are also 2 Ouroboros which are quite mighty. I thought that the knocker was some kind of treasure, so I specially cut off the teeth of the Ouroboros and made a knocker to play with. Who knew that it was useless? Chapter 440. The corner of Bai Chongqun's mouth twitched. Nongzhu's expression was even more interesting. It was no exaggeration to say that her expression was ever-changing. She gritted her teeth and asked, Did you saw off the knocker of the gate to the underworld? I didn't get all of them, just one. Because the 2 animal teeth were too solid, it was troublesome. Yu Qianzhou scratched his head. Zi could imagine what the gate to the underworld was, for no matter how inexperienced she was. This guy actually dared to. Zi looked at him dumbfounded. For the first time the word audacious appeared in her mind. Clap clap. Nongzhu's gaze lingered on the master and disciple. She shook her head and exclaimed, Like master, like disciple. I admire you so much. You two are a perfect match. Then, as if she thought of something, she said to Yu Qianzhou, Where's the thing? Is the knocker with you? Take it out and let me have a look. Yu Qianzhou touched his waist subconsciously. It was empty. Only then did he remember that his storage bag was snatched by Nongzhu. He glanced at the storage bag on the ground and couldn't help but curse Nongzhu's ancestors. He knew that Bai Chongqun was already suspicious. Although it was better now, if he didn't take out some evidence to completely dispel his doubts, the consequences would be unpredictable. So, under the gazes of the others, Yu Qianzhou reached into his clothes and searched for a while. He weakly took out another storage bag and smiled awkwardly at them. Bai Chongqun, Nongzhu and Zi were stunned at the same time. They looked at the storage bag on the ground with different expressions. They couldn't tell what it smelled like. Old Bai, you have a good disciple. Nongzhu said to Bai Chongqun as if she was praising him. Bai Chongqun's eyebrows twitched. He was really speechless. I have offended too many people in the cultivation world, so I had to hang this storage bag to confuse the enemies outside. Yu Qianzhou explained. Actually, even this storage bag was taken from Utopia at the last minute. As he spoke, he reached into the storage bag and took out a pair of black tusks as long as chopsticks and as thick as a banana. He handed them to Nongzhu. When this pair of things was taken out, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped a lot. A faintly discernible gloomy aura gradually filled the room. The pupils of the other 3 slightly shrank. Yu Qianzhou also felt it himself. He was somewhat surprised. He didn't feel anything unusual in front of the gate of the underworld. How could it be like this now? He himself had forgotten one thing. The eerie aura in front of the underworld gate was already very dense. The aura emitted by the 2 fangs was really insignificant. How could he have sensed it at that time? Now that they were in the mortal world, it would be strange if something from the netherworld appeared here. Nongzhu held the 2 black sticks in her hands and felt that they were cold to the bone. They were indeed extraordinary. She knocked them against each other and the sound of dang dang was dull but heart-wrenching. Every time it rang, people would feel frightened. Is this the tooth of the heaven-devouring beast on the gate to the netherworld? Nongzhu asked. Seeing that Yu Qianzhou nodded in agreement, he turned it over and over again for a long time, but he could not tell what it was made of. Shaking his head, he passed it to Bai Chongqun and said, Old Bai, take a look at what this is. I have never seen it before. Bai Chongqun took it and looked at it for a long time, but he was also silent. Obviously he couldn't tell it apart. Where is the ring? Nongzhu frowned and said, I want to see the ring. Why did you give me 2 animal teeth? Faster thief. Wouldn't it be more believable if he had teeth and rings? Yu Qianqiu reached into the storage bag again, but his vision blurred and the storage bag in his hand disappeared. Looking up, Nongzhu seemed to be crazily playing with the storage bag. Yu Qianqiu had a bad feeling about this. Sure enough, Nongzhu suddenly raised his head with his eyes wide open. Weighing the storage bag in his hand, he shouted without caring about his handsome image. Yu Qianqiu, don't tell me that this is another thing you use to confuse the enemy. Pa. The storage bag was thrown aside. Bai Changchun and Ziyi were stunned at the same time. They rarely saw Nongzhu lose his composure like this. Don't, I am more than 1,000 years old, I can't bear it. Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. He reached into his robe and took out another storage pouch. He smiled awkwardly and said, I have too many storage pouches for self-defense. I took the wrong one. He quickly took out a large black ring from the storage pouch. The temperature in the hall dropped again and the gloomy atmosphere became stronger. It seemed that the inside and outside of the hall were two different worlds. Yu Qianqiu respectfully handed the ring to Bai Changchun. Bai Changchun took it and returned the two animal teeth to him. Holding the big ring, he squinted his eyes and looked at it carefully. When Yu Qianqiu was about to put the two animal teeth away, the storage bag in his hand disappeared again. He saw Nongzhu holding the storage bag and sneered, Is it empty again? Then he injected his divine sense into it to check. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He stared at Nongzhu's handsome face, which was gradually changing shape. Pop. The storage bag was thrown away again. Nongzhu slowly walked towards him with a twitching face and said, I'll strip you naked and see how many storage bags you have. Ziyi looked at her master in surprise. She didn't expect her master to be so shameless. Not only did he rob Nongzhu several times, but he also wanted to strip Nongzhu naked. Master, help me. Yu Qianqiu felt wronged and moved to Bai Changchun's side. Bai Changchun stared at Nongzhu coldly and scolded, Have you had enough? Don't you act like a master? Then he threw the big ring to Nongzhu. Nongzhu caught the big ring and was slightly stunned. Looking at Ziyi, he realized that it was inappropriate. Stripping a man naked in front of his daughter was not something a father should do. She was so angry that she became muddle-headed. How could she say such things in front of her daughter? In order to cover up her embarrassment, Nongzhu held the big ring and examined it seriously. After looking at it, she nodded and said, This thing is obviously made of the same material as the two beast teeth. We can't tell, so it must be something rare. Maybe Nanming can recognize it. Why don't we show it to him? After a pause, Nongzhu suddenly laughed out loud and said, Old Bai, with this thing in hand, even if you can't harvest any of the flame-deficient profound fruits outside, and even if it's difficult to invite that old guy from Nanming, I guarantee that he will still come to you. That old guy can't resist the temptation of this rare material. Bai Changchun nodded slightly. He had already imagined what Nongzhu said. Nanming would come to him and beg him. He couldn't help but smile. But then he frowned and subconsciously looked at Yu Qianqiu. This thing was his disciple's. As a master, how could he use his disciples' things without permission? Not to mention he had never given anything to Yu Qianqiu. Nongzhu knew Bai Changchun very well. Looking at his expression, she knew what he was worried about. This world's #1 master had his own pride. He would rather break than bend. He would never ask his disciple for something. It seemed that it was time for him to be the bad guy again. Nongzhu coughed and said to Yu Qianqiu indifferently, Yu Qianqiu, what do you need these two beast teeth and the door knocker for? If not, you can give them to your master. Your master has great use for them. Since the words were so clear, how could Yu Qianqiu not know what she meant? He immediately offered the two beast teeth and said, Master, if you need them, you can take them. Anyway, they are useless in my hands. If they are not enough, you can tell me. At worst, I will tear down the gate of the underworld. Tear down the gate of the underworld? Nongzhu was shocked and said, Yu Qianqiu, don't mess around. That gate is very important. It is the thing that separates the yin and yang. You can't touch it. The two beast teeth and the door knocker are enough. He had heard a lot about Yu Qianqiu, and he knew that there was nothing this guy didn't dare to do in the cultivation world. But how could the cultivation world be compared with the underworld? The underworld was as famous as the immortal world. If he really tore down the gate of the underworld, oh my, God knows what would happen. Ziyi was shocked by Yu Qianqiu's words again. She stuck out her bright red tongue. She really admired Yu Qianqiu from the bottom of her heart. He wanted to tear down the gate of the underworld. Master, is it really enough? If not, I can leave the ghost gate alone for the time being. But I can get you another door knocker. Yu Qianzhou patted his chest and promised. Do you really think it belongs to you? Nongzhu was speechless. Bai Chongqun stared at Yu Qianzhou with his deep eyes, as if he could see through people's thoughts, which made Yu Qianzhou feel guilty. After a while, Bai Chongqun silently put the 2 ferocious broken teeth and the big ring into the storage bag, and said to Yu Qianzhou, "Follow me to the 9th Netherworld cave." Why would I go to the 9th Netherworld cave? I just said it casually. Does the old guy really want me to tear down the gate of the underworld? No way. Yu Qianzhou was shocked, but he forced himself to calm down and saluted, "I." Before he could finish the word yes, he felt his arm was tightened. His vision blurred and the wind suddenly rushed in his ears. When he opened his eyes again, he was already above the sparkling 1,000-mile lake, flying at a speed that he had never experienced before. His arm was grabbed by Chongqun. Suddenly, someone shouted from behind, "Old Bai, wait for me. Don't fly so fast." Yu Qianzhou looked back and saw that the Xiantian island had become a sesame dot. Nongzhu had already followed them from afar and was gradually approaching. Zi, who was on the Xiantian island, saw that the 3 people in front of her had suddenly disappeared. She was stunned for a moment, but then she thought of the conversation between them and immediately understood what was going on. She immediately shouted, "Master, take me to see them." But when she teleported to the sky outside the house, she could no longer see the shadows of the 3 people. She circled around in the sky for a few times and then came back in a huff. When Nongzhu caught up with them, the 3 people had just passed through the beautiful 1,000-mile lake, turned into shadows and flew into the endless clouds and fog. Yu Qianzhou looked around him and he was so shocked that he was speechless. The #1 expert in the world was indeed extraordinary. How long had it been? In less than an hour they had already left the 1,000-mile lake. Chapter 441. Nongzhu was also shocked. Although she knew that Bai Chongqun's cultivation was strong, it was hard for her to catch up with him while flying. The gap between them was hard to measure. And it seemed that he didn't try his best. What he showed was just average. "Old Bai, why are you in a hurry to go to the 9th abyss cave?" Nongzhu asked. Bai Chongqun looked ahead and didn't answer her. He sighed in his heart. If he didn't want Yu Qianzhou to take over the demon realm, he wouldn't have to do this. The demon realm had been passed down from generation to generation. The torture envoy of each generation couldn't be easily appointed. They had to be carefully selected without any negligence. Once the wrong person was appointed, the whole world would be in chaos, and the painstaking efforts of the previous torture envoys would be wasted. If Yu Qianzhou was just his disciple, it wouldn't be a big deal. But this guy had great potential and Bai Chongqun liked him at first sight. However, he could also tell that this fellow was not someone who would settle down. His actions were sneaky and he flattered without hesitation. He was not stingy with his flattery and he did not know what shame was. But these were not the most important things for Bai Chongqun. A disciple who didn't have the ability to adapt would be embarrassed. That was why he asked Yu Qianzhou to help the Wuxia cultivation world. The purpose was to train him. In fact, people like Bai Chongqun who had reached the level of cultivation, cared about all the people in the world. Why would they care about the cultivation world of China? In his eyes, the cultivation world had long lost the distinction of nationality. The cultivation world was the cultivation world. Cultivators from different countries were all part of the cultivation world. The soul formation realm cultivators from different countries were just like chickens and dogs in Bai Chongqun's eyes. He could kill them in an instant. No one in the world could stop him. But he understood the way of heaven and understood balance was the truth. Since he understood this way, he had to keep it. Bai Chongqun didn't have much time. Since he chose Yu Qianzhou to take over as the torture envoy of the demon realm, he had to make the best use of time to train this guy. The soul formation experts of each country could be used as a whetstone to sharpen the blunt knife that was Yu Qianzhou. Once the blunt knife revealed its cold edge and became invincible when it wielded the knife to sweep the world, it would be time to hide its edge in the demon ghost region. In this way, the demon realm would still be a forbidden area in the world. No one dared to violate it because one of them could intimidate the world. As long as the torture envoy was there, the demon realm would not be chaotic. The cultivation world would not be in chaos if the demon ghost territory was not in chaos, and the world would not be in chaos if the cultivation world was not in chaos. This was the responsibility of the torture envoy of the demon ghost territory. However, no matter how high Bai Chongqun's cultivation was, the human heart was fickle and he couldn't see through it. If his disciple even lied his master, how could he entrust him with such an important task? The Jitian Ji Chongqun's heart. For example, Bai Chongqun himself. Few people in the cultivation world who knew him would say that he was a good person. His high cultivation, unreasonable and indiscriminate killing of innocent people were his trademark. Therefore he would not use the standards of a good person to judge Yu Qianzhou. However, he valued the quality of his character. Therefore, no matter how perfect Yu Qianzhou's story was, Bai Chongqun still had to go to the 9th nether cave to see for himself. If it was not true, Nongzhu would have to prepare to take over the demon realm. The lingering sound of the 3 people flying in the sky made the people in the demon realm tremble and hide quietly. Coming from the direction of the 1,000-mile lake, who else could have such a cultivation except for the emotionless torturing envoy? The place where the 3 people flew over was so quiet that no sound could be heard. Yu Qianzhou already knew what Bai Chongqun was going to do. Fortunately, he was very honest and told everything. There was nothing to be afraid of. After half a day, the 3 people arrived at the sky above the territory of Yuji. Outside the Ghost King Hall, the area within a radius of several dozen miles was covered by a huge formation. Dark clouds billowed, and looking down from above, it was even more eerie and frightening than the surrounding areas, making it impossible to see what was below. Bai Chongqun didn't slow down at all when the 3 people arrived. He raised his hand and waved, pointing at the dense clouds and fog below. An incomparably powerful momentum instantly changed the color of the wind and clouds between heaven and earth. 100-meter-long cone-shaped light burst forth from the 2 fingers, illuminating the dark surroundings with a dense white light. It was as if dozens of thunderbolts had appeared at the same time. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out, followed by explosions of various sizes within a radius of several dozen kilometers. Yu Qianzhou was dumbstruck. He could be considered to have experienced what it meant to be the #1 expert in the world. The power of a single finger was enough to destroy the great formation that enveloped this place. The explosions in the surroundings were clearly the foundation of the formation that could not withstand such a great pressure and collapsed one after another. The rolling dark clouds were shaken by the power of one finger, swaying to the surrounding sky, revealing the terrain below. Before Yu Qianzhou could react, he had been brought down by Bai Chongqun. The 3 of them just happened to be standing on the cliff opposite the 9 Netherworld cavern. Ghostly wails and wolf howls rang out incessantly. Yu Qianzhou looked around and saw ghostly figures everywhere. They looked panic-stricken. They were probably frightened by the commotion caused by Bai Chongqun. Nongzhu glanced at Bai Chongqun and shook her head with a wry smile. Bai Chongqun did not show any mercy when he fought in his own territory. He just raised his hand and completely destroyed the defensive formation. It would take a lot of effort to set it up again. Humph! Bai Chongqun snorted coldly. His voice was not loud but sonorous. It spread far and wide like a substance, immediately calming all kinds of restlessness as if nothing had happened. Yu Qianzhou secretly clicked his tongue. What was majestic? This was majestic. At this moment, Yu Ji had already arrived with a group of ghost generals. With just a glance, she confirmed everyone's guess. All of them rushed into the valley with pale faces and knelt down to pay their respects, singing in unison, "Greetings, Lord Torture Envoy." After that, they knelt down with their heads down, feeling very nervous. They didn't know why this great master came today and whether it was a good or bad thing. Yu Qianzhou looked at the crowd kneeling down below and turned to look at Bai Chongqun. He saw that Bai Chongqun was staring at the cave of the 9th nether expressionlessly, not even bothering to look at the Ghost King below. So he coughed and made the decision without authorization, shouting, "Yuji, it's none of your business here. Go away. Don't disturb me without my permission." Yes. Yuji didn't dare to hesitate and quickly called the Ghost King to leave. Before leaving, Yuji looked back and saw Yu Qianzhou smiling at her. She immediately felt relieved and knew that it was really none of her business. She didn't dare to stay any longer and quickly left. When no one was disturbing them, Bai Chongqun said lightly, "Yu Qianzhou, lead the way." He wanted to see if this disciple could really come and go freely in the cave of the 9th nether. Yes. Yu Qianzhou bowed respectfully. Then he quickly jumped down the cliff. In midair, a black flying sword flashed out of his sleeve and held him up. His whole body was instantly covered with dense black fire, and he quickly flew to the cave of the 9th nether. A layer of transparent protective upstanding qi surged out of Bai Chongqun and Nongzhu's bodies. They kept a distance of 1 or 2 meters from Yu Qianzhou, not giving up. As soon as they entered the cave, it was like entering another world. The chilly wind wrapped with evil spirits was blowing continuously. Yu Qianzhou looked back. He knew that his speed was too slow for the two of them, so he didn't dare to delay. With a flick of his sleeves, 3 flying swords of blue fire immediately sprang out and spun out, illuminating the path ahead. Yu Qianzhou raised the speed of the flying swords to the limit, and followed the 3 flying swords of blue fire in the cave of the 9th nether. They didn't slow down at all when they turned around, and he made full use of his flying swords controlling skills. What he did made Bai Chongqun and Nongzhu look at each other speechlessly. Both of them had been here before, but they didn't dare to rush in the cave of the 9th nether like this. They were not afraid of the chilly wind and black evil spirits in front, but the black evil wind blades behind them were not a joke. They were the nemesis of protective upstanding qi, and they had to be careful with their cultivation. Now they followed behind Yu Qianzhou, and the black evil wind blades that shot at them at a rapid speed immediately disappeared when they touched the black fire on his body. It was the first time for the 2 masters of soul formation stage to fly in the cave of the 9th nether at such a fast speed. Nongzhu was amazed all the way. Fate made fools of people. Sure enough, everything had its vanquisher. Some things really couldn't be solved by the level of cultivation. Hey! Nongzhu, who was flying closely behind, suddenly found that there was a forked entrance in the place where they had just flown past. He was sure that he hadn't seen it when he came in before. Just at this moment he was almost left behind by Yu Qianzhou in front of him. He was shocked and quickly followed. Without the protection of Yu Qianzhou in this place, he would be exhausted to death if he wanted to go there alone. He didn't have the ability to protect himself like Bai Chongqun did. Not long after turning a corner, the wind suddenly whistled and the resistance was amazing. With Yu Qianzhou's cultivation he couldn't fly against the wind at all. Standing on the flying sword he was shaken by the wind, so he had to put away the flying sword and walk. Bai Chongqun and Nongzhu didn't dare to be careless and continued to follow behind him. After a few hours, Nongzhu saw the 8 powerful wind eyes for the first time. He had never been here before. The black evil wind blades were as numerous as tangles, which was really scary. He didn't care about his demeanor and carefully hid behind Yu Qianzhou. Bai Chongqun already had a sword in his hand. Occasionally there were wind blades that came from tricky angles, but they were all hit by his long sword and bounced off. Presumably when he came in before he relied on this skill. Fortunately, it didn't take long for the tunnel dug by Yu Qianzhou to appear in front of them. After the 3 of them rushed in they were relieved. Although the tunnel was filled with black evil spirits, with Bai Chongqun's and Nongzhu's cultivation, such consumption was nothing. "This is the tunnel you dug?" Nongzhu looked around and asked curiously. "At that time I couldn't pass through the wind eyes above, so I had to come up with this stupid way." Yu Qianzhou smiled embarrassedly. "It's really stupid. So stupid that no one can surpass you." Nongzhu murmured softly and then frowned and asked, "Just now I found another entrance in the tunnel. It didn't seem to exist when I came in before. Does it have anything to do with you?" Chapter 442. Bai Chongqun also looked over. Apparently he had also found the hole. Yu Qianzhou didn't say a word as he stretched out his hand to lift the hem of his robe and took out another storage pouch from behind him. He had no choice. The bag that he hung outside was thrown away by Nongzhu. He had already taken 2 storage bags from his chest. It would be inappropriate to take another one from his chest, so he took one from his butt. "You're a genius. You can hide a storage bag on your butt." Nongzhu rolled her eyes and couldn't help but mock him. Yu Qianzhou pretended not to hear anything. He took out a flying artifact from his storage pouch and said, "I heard that nether iron is very sturdy. When I went out last time I dug up a lot of it and asked the Jing clan of the 4 major clans to forge it into a flying artifact. That hole was left when I was digging for the nether iron." He could only say this. Otherwise, his secret of coming and going without a trace would be exposed. The 2 of them looked at the flying instrument and found that it was indeed made of nether iron. Nongzhu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Using nether iron to build a flying instrument. You've done a lot of harm to the 9th netherworld cave. Bai Chongqun's doubts were solved. He didn't stop and quickly flashed to the other end of the tunnel. Nongzhu shook her head speechlessly and chased after him. When Yu Qianchou arrived at the end of the tunnel, he found that the two of them were standing in front of the glowing red hole, silently watching the majestic sea of fire of the netherworld. No one knew what they were thinking. It seemed that the two of them could resist the side effects of the sea of fire of the netherworld with their cultivation. After a long time facing the sea of fire of the netherworld, Nongzhu asked without turning her head, Yu Qianchou, how far do we need to go through the sea of fire of the netherworld to reach the gate of the underworld? Yu Qianchou walked behind the two of them and said respectfully, not far, about 1,000 meters. Although it's not far, it's an insurmountable moat for mortals. Bai Changchun sighed. He had tried to cross the moat before but failed. He couldn't help feeling a little emotional. If Master wants to go there, I may be able to help you, Yu Qianchou said. Bai Changchun did not say anything. Nongzhu turned her head and glanced at him. She knew that he was proud and arrogant. His cultivation was the best in the world. Even if he wanted to go there, he would not let his apprentice help him. If he wanted to go there, he would force his way through with his own strength. In fact, Nongzhu wanted to go there and have a look, but she was a little afraid of the legendary forbidden area. What's more, he was used to being free and unfettered. He was too lazy to touch anything that was too risky. After thinking about it, he restrained his curiosity. It wouldn't be fun if he didn't return. He sighed and asked, Yu Qianchou, is there nothing else in front of the netherworld gate? Yu Qianchou thought for a moment and said, basically it's nothing much. There's a large stone tablet with some words written on it that forbid trespassing. Furthermore, there is some grass growing on the ground. It is the legendary resurrection grass. Since he was already here, he might as well say everything he could to prevent any new problems from arising. Reviving grass? Bai Changchun and Nongzhu exclaimed at the same time. The two turned around abruptly and stared at him with their eyes bursting with extraordinary splendor. Hearing that there really was a precious spirit grass that could prolong one's life, they couldn't help but exclaim no matter how high their cultivation was. Especially for a master like Bai Changchun who was about to die, it was impossible that it wasn't tempting. As a result, Yu Qianchou was startled. He said in astonishment, Is there any problem? No problem, no problem. Nongzhu rubbed her hands and laughed. Well, Yu Qianchou, I haven't seen that thing before. Please go and get some for me and let me see what it looks like. Yu Qianchou lowered his head and pondered for a long time. He didn't answer for a long time, but he was thinking that things had to be a little complicated. If things went too smoothly, it would be suspicious. As a result, Nongzhu was a little anxious. Bai Changchun asked, Is there any inconvenience? Well, Yu Qianchou shook his head slightly and then nodded. Master, I'm afraid it's a little troublesome. You can come and go freely here. What kind of trouble can there be? Nongzhu took a few steps closer and said suspiciously, Is there any guardian spirit beast around the resurrection grass? Or is it dangerous to pick it? Senior Nongzhu, you misunderstood me. I didn't mean that. Yu Qianchou frowned and said, I've destroyed a lot of the resurrection grass in that place. Now there are not many left. If you pick it without any preparation, it will only be a waste. When he said, I've destroyed a lot of the resurrection grass, Bai Changchun and Nongzhu were a little frightened. Wait. Nongzhu raised her hand and said, Why don't I understand what you mean? You are a black sheep. Why did you destroy the resurrection grass? For alchemy, of course. Yu Qianchou said frankly. Alchemy? Nongzhu asked and suddenly showed a look of understanding. She beat her chest and stomped her feet, howling, You are such a coward. Alchemy? You are a black sheep. I understand. You can practice alchemy with anything else. Why do you have to waste this treasure? Aren't you afraid of being punished by heaven? This guy's imagination was really rich. No wonder he was a master of the soul formation stage. Yu Qianchou curled his lips and said, Senior Nongzhu, you misunderstood me. I'm not that stupid. At that time, I didn't pay attention to the method when I picked it. As a result, hundreds of them were destroyed. This guy had the intention to make fun of them. He pretended to be respectful, but in fact he was not happy. So he had to exaggerate to deliberately scare the two masters. He wanted to torture the two old guys in another way so that he would feel better. Sure enough, not to mention Nongzhu, even Bai Changchun gasped. Nongzhu's face twitched and said, You actually destroyed hundreds of resurrection grass? You are a black sheep. A real black sheep. Black sheep, tell me honestly what is going on. This resurrection grass is not a spiritual herb that belongs to the human world. When picking it, you can't touch the vitality of the human world. I didn't pay attention at that time and picked hundreds of them at once. Unexpectedly, they all turned into smoke and disappeared. Speaking of this, Yu Qianzhou could not help but shake his head with a sigh. Then he said to Nongzhu, "That's why I said that picking them without preparation can only be a waste." Nongzhu was stunned and said, "I see. So ordinary people can't pick them?" As soon as she finished speaking, Yu Qianzhou waved his hand arrogantly and said, "It's not that there is no way at all. At least I got 3 of them and made a furnace of 7 orifices exquisite pill." "You made the 7 orifices exquisite pill?" Bai Changchun and Nongzhu exclaimed again. Just as the 2 of them relaxed, their hearts started beating wildly again because of this fellow. People of the soul formation stage were also human. They could not resist the temptation, so there was nothing to be afraid of. Although Yu Qianzhou was complacent in his heart, he still looked calm on the surface. However, someone could not calm down. Nongzhu grabbed his clothes and said fiercely, "Boy, don't joke with me. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? How can a young man like you make the 7 orifices exquisite pill? Senior Nongzhu, I advise you to let go. I'm not afraid of you if we fight here," Yu Qianzhou said arrogantly. His words stunned Bai Changchun and Nongzhu at the same time. Nongzhu was not angry but laughed and said, "Wow. You're really powerful. I'd like to see it." With a buzz sound, a black flame suddenly burst out from Yu Qianzhou's body without warning. "Black fire!" Nongzhu screamed and quickly let go. In the blink of an eye, she was a few meters away. Then she shouted, "Yu Qianzhou, how dare you fight with me? If I don't teach you a lesson today." Before she finished her words, she could not say it. Not only did Yu Qianzhou retract the black fire, but he also took out a strange red pill from the storage bag in his hand. The soft red light rippled with a blood-like luster. The originally lifeless cave entrance suddenly gave people a feeling of burning passion, forming a strong contrast with the previous scene. Anyone could see the majestic energy contained in the pill. Although the color was strange, it was not comparable to ordinary pills. Nongzhu's anger instantly subsided as if nothing had happened just now. He stared with his eyes wide open and said tongue-tied, "Yu Qian, could this be the 7 orifices exquisite pill that you mentioned?" He could not help but be surprised. If it was really the 7 orifices exquisite pill, it would be amazing. If it was taken by a mortal, it could increase his life by 50 years. If it was taken by a cultivator, it was even better. It was said that it could increase his life by 150 years. Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes as if he knew who Bai Changchun was. Ignoring him, he piously held the blood-red pill in his hand and walked up to Bai Changchun. With a solemn expression, he said, "Master, when I was wandering outside, I once snatched a jade archive from a wandering cultivator. Who would have thought that it was a pill recipe jade archive left by the alchemy sect thousands of years ago? From there, I learned many alchemy techniques." Bai Changchun was moved. Nongzhu was even more surprised. "The Dan sect's jade archive of the Dan sect? Let me see it." Back then, the alchemy sect had relied on their alchemy skills to stand tall in the cultivation world. However, it was precisely because there were too many people who coveted their pill recipes that the alchemy sect was exterminated. Unfortunately, although the Dan sect was destroyed, its top secret formula was not obtained by outsiders. After the incident, the whole cultivation world could not help but sigh. If they knew this would happen, they would not have made the elixirs that could be bought in the past extinct. Although Bai Changchun and Nongzhu had lived for many years, they had only heard about the past of the Dan sect. Yu Qianzhou ignored him and continued, "Later on, this disciple was lucky enough to be accepted by Master as a disciple. In the Fey Ghost domain, all the monster kings and ghost kings presented gifts to this disciple. There was even a monster king who didn't recognize the treasure and presented the rare spirit herb Audiobook flower." Hearing this, Bai Changchun and Nongzhu looked at each other. Nongzhu's expression seemed to be asking, "You didn't know there was such a treasure in your territory? I learned that you were near the end of your life. I knew the formula of the 7 orifices elixir and obtained one of its main ingredients, the Audiobook flower. In addition, I heard that there was the resurrection grass in the 9th netherworld cave. Therefore, I wanted to refine the life-prolonging elixir. I ordered the monster kings and the ghost king in the demon region to collect all kinds of spiritual herbs. As a result, most of the spiritual herbs were collected, but the resurrection grass was missing. In the end, I was curious and broke into the 9th netherworld cave to find the resurrection grass. Chapter 443. Yu Qianqiu recounted the story of how he refined the 7 orifices exquisite pellet. In short, it was a series of coincidences that led to the successful refinement of the 7 orifices exquisite pellet. Nongzhu clicked her tongue and said, "You rascal, why do all the good things happen to you? I've lived for so many years, yet I'm not as lucky as you." Fate brings about the birth of a spiritual pill. Bai Chongqun exclaimed. Now that Yu Qianqiu had presented the pellet to him, how could he not know that his disciple was presenting it to him? Thinking about the reason, he felt that it was the will of the heavens. Just as he was nearing the end of his lifespan, he accepted this disciple. Moreover, this disciple only had the opportunity to refine such a spiritual pill because he was his disciple. Everything was predestined. The heavens clearly wanted him to live for another 100 years. Bai Chongqun and Nongzhu already believed in Yu Qianqiu's words without a doubt. No one would lie on purpose to present such a heaven-defying spiritual pill. As for what he said about robbing a loose cultivator's jade archive, the two of them had no intention of pursuing the matter. The life or death of a mere loose cultivator was not worthy of their concern. From another perspective, Yu Qianqiu had even revealed the privacy of the fight. This further proved his sincerity towards his master. Before I formally acknowledged you as my master, I had nothing on me. I didn't even have a gift. Today I specially present a 7 orifices exquisite pellet that I personally refined. Please accept it, master. Yu Qianqiu respectfully held up the spiritual pill in his palm. This fellow seemed to like to pick the right time to present gifts. Now he was not even letting Bai Chongqun go. It seemed that his nature was hard to change. If he had been refining the pellet from the beginning with Bai Chongqun in mind, he might not even be able to convince himself with this reason. Bai Chongqun would not be interested in ordinary items. However, this item was valuable, but it was a reasonable gift. Bai Chongqun could not refuse it. After a pause, he said, "I will accept your filial piety." With a wave of his palm, the spiritual pill in Yu Qianqiu's hand floated up and landed on his palm. He then kept it in his storage pouch. "Thank you, master," Yu Qianqiu said happily. "Yu Qianqiu, let's discuss something," Nongzhu said with a smile. "Senior Nongzhu, please speak," Yu Qianqiu replied. Nongzhu rubbed her hands and said with embarrassment, "Didn't you say that you refined 9 pills in 1 furnace? Anyway, it's useless to eat too much of it. Why don't you give me one as a greeting gift?" "No." Yu Qianqiu straightforwardly refused. Nongzhu was stunned and then her face darkened. "Old Bai, your disciple is really stingy." Bai Chongqun was speechless. He understood what Nongzhu meant. She wanted him to pressure Yu Qianqiu with his identity as her master. But how could he open his mouth for such a thing? "Senior Nongzhu, it's not that I'm stingy," Yu Qianqiu explained. 9 spiritual pills are too precious. If I show my face in the cultivation world, I'm afraid it will cause a bloody storm. So I hid them all in a secret place. This time I came back to visit you, master, so I took one with me. As for the other 8, they are not with me at all." Nongzhu was stunned and said helplessly, "Okay, I won't force you. But remember to leave one for me. Z has helped you for such a long time. No matter what, you should leave one for her, right?" "Damn it. Do you want to leave one for your woman, Jasper Flower Fairy?" Yu Qianqiu was speechless. They were both masters of Huashan realm. Why was there such a big difference in their characters? "That's it. Don't regret it." Nongzhu waved her hand and made a decision. Then she turned to the side with her eyebrows beaming. He said, "Eh." The other 2 looked at her and saw Nongzhu pinching her chin while facing the wall. She said eloquently, "Predecessors plant trees, descendants enjoy the shade. It's sad to miss the wind. I was kind enough to dig a tunnel for the descendants to enter and exit." "Yu Qianqiu?" Nongzhu looked back at Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, "It turns out that you didn't forget to leave your name after doing a good deed." "It's just for fun," Yu Qianqiu said awkwardly. "Didn't you say that old Bai also left a message?" Nongzhu looked around and walked to the opposite wall. She continued to read, "I heard that master had been here, so I also came to join in the fun. Since I couldn't go to master's place, I went to have a try. The new generation excels the old. Each generation is stronger than the previous one." Yu Qianqiu was here? "You again? Is it so fun to leave a message here?" Nongzhu laughed happily and then looked at Bai Chongqun. "Old Bai, your disciple is full of ambition. Look at this sentence. The new generation excels the old. Each generation is stronger than the previous one foot. He wants to surpass you, the #1 master in the world. Damn. Nongzhu, I will *CK your daughter. Yu Qianchou was a little flustered. He was really afraid that Bai Chongqun would be unhappy. Then all his previous efforts would be in vain. He hurriedly explained, "It's just a joke. Master, please don't take it seriously." "So what if it's true?" Bai Chongqun stared at the relic left by Yu Qianchou on the wall. He nodded slightly and said, "If you can surpass me, I will only be happy and not angry. I am lonely and invincible in the world, but I have no fate to go to heaven. I have long heard that the netherworld is equal to the celestial world. I want to find a strong opponent. The fire sea of the netherworld separates the two worlds." Bai Chongqun returned with hatred. "Well, I don't need to look at the back to know that it's old Bai's tone." Nongzhu compared their handwriting and suddenly asked, "Yu Qianchou, have you ever been educated?" Yu Qianchou was stunned and replied, "I have. What's wrong?" He was confused by Nongzhu's sudden words. "No wonder you dared to leave a message in the 9th netherworld cave. Even if the ghosts and deities of the netherworld come out, I'm sure they will be scared away by your words. I Nongzhu admire you." Nongzhu was overjoyed and said with a smile. Yu Qianchou was touched on the sore spot of his second life. He blushed and said angrily, "Senior Nongzhu, do you still want the 7 orifices exquisite pill or not?" Yes. I was wrong. I made a slip of the tongue." Nongzhu apologized, but the smile on her face became more and more arrogant. Bai Chongqun couldn't help but chuckle when he heard their conversation. It could be seen that Yu Qianchou had really integrated into this small circle. Yu Qianchou's face was gloomy and he didn't say anything. Nongzhu stopped laughing and a cold light flashed out of the storage bag. He held a sword with one hand and shouted with great flourish on the wall of the netherworld iron cave, "Nongzhu of the South Sea has been here." The sword, which was infused with strong cultivation, danced in the air and 8 elegant and refined characters appeared on the wall of the netherworld iron cave. Nongzhu put away the sword and even nodded with satisfaction. Yu Qianchou looked at it and had to admit that Nongzhu's handwriting was as handsome as his. However, Yu Qianchou's face became increasingly gloomy. Of the 3 of them, his handwriting was the ugliest. It was simply shameful to display it here. He wanted nothing more than to smooth out his handwriting right now. Bai Chongqun smiled and said, "Well, we can't stay here for long. Let's go back." After saying that, protective upstanding qi gushed out of his body and flashed away. Nongzhu winked at Yu Qianchou and laughed out loud. Then she left as well. As soon as the 3 of them left the netherworld cave, Bai Chongqun grabbed Yu Qianchou's arm again and flew to Xianxia Island. As they flew away, Yuji, who was standing restlessly in the hall of the Ghost King, murmured to herself, "Have they left?" At this time the bearded ghost General Zhang Ling came in and cupped his hands. "Madam, the punishment envoy and Mr. Yu have returned." The ghost generals in the hall were relieved when they heard the news. The change of weather in the sky was too horrible. In particular, that frightening ray of light had instantly destroyed the defensive formation of this place. In the hands of such an expert, such a large formation did not even have the slightest bit of defensive ability. How could people not be terrified? The punishment envoy's means were earth-shattering once he showed them. Who is the other person beside the punishment envoy and Mr. Yu? Do any of you know him? Yuji looked around and asked. The ghost generals in the hall racked their brains but could not think of anyone. They all shook their heads. The bearded ghost General Zhang Ling said in a low voice, "Madam, judging from the situation when they left, Mr. Yu's flying speed was a little slow, so he was taken away by the punishment envoy himself. The other person could catch up with the punishment envoy, so he should be a master of the Huashan realm." Another Huashan realm? The hall was full of discussion. Yuji revealed a bitter smile. The little disciple from back then was now surrounded by such powerful people. It was truly hard to predict what would happen in the world. Fortunately, she had taken a gamble back then. Thinking of this, Yuji shook her head slightly and sighed to the crowd. "We shouldn't talk about the punishment envoy. General Zhang Ling, give the order to rearrange the protective formation." The ghost generals obeyed the order. As soon as the 3 of them returned to Xianxia Island, Ze, who was chatting with Lady Mu, immediately followed them. Only Lady Mu stood far away and dared not to approach without being called. They walked into the big house. Bai Chongqun stood silently for a while with his back to the crowd. Then he suddenly turned around and said, I want to take the panacea. Nongzhu, protect me. You two can leave. Nongzhu nodded seriously and said, See, you and Yu Qianchou are not allowed to come close without permission. Let Senior Bai be at ease and let the elixir work to its best state. You all can leave now. She took the lead and walked out of the room. When Yu Qianchou and Ziyi bowed and left, they found that Nongzhu had already reached the roof and was sitting on it with her legs crossed, motionless. Seeing such a serious situation, the two secretly clicked their tongues and hurriedly walked away. When they came to the lake, Yu Qianchou found a flat place to lie down peacefully. He crossed his legs and swung them. He was secretly proud of himself. Ziyi, who followed him, was full of curiosity. She sat beside him and looked around. Then she bent down and whispered in his ear, Yu Qianchou, what panacea does Senior Bai want to take? Tell me about it. I can't tell you. If you want to know, ask your master. Yu Qianchou tilted his head to one side. Ziyi's pretty face turned cold. She shouted in a low voice, Are you going to tell me or not? No. Yu Qianchou shook his head unwillingly. Unexpectedly, his neck was tightened. Ziyi turned over and sat on him. She strangled his neck and threatened, Are you sure you won't tell me? Such an ambiguous position, coupled with the soft buttocks on his lower abdomen, made Yu Qianchou dumbfounded. What else could he say? Nongzhu, who was guarding on the roof, had already spread her divine sense around. Within the scope of her divine sense, even the slightest movement could not be hidden from her, not to mention such a big movement. Nongzhu opened her eyes and mouth wide. She was so shocked that she almost fell down from the roof. Chapter 444. What a jerk. You don't need a reason to do such a strong move. I'll bear it silently. Yu Qianchou closed his eyes in satisfaction. He stretched his legs out and said nothing. He was ready not to resist and let the beauty do whatever she wanted. If you don't say it, I won't be polite anymore. Ziyi tightened her grip on his neck and issued an ultimatum. Scoundrel. Yu Qianchou opened his eyes and muttered with great effort. Ziyi didn't hear it clearly. She thought she might have tightened her grip, so she loosened her grip and asked, What pill? You pervert, if you don't let me go I'll scream. Yu Qianchou warned her clearly. Ziyi's pretty face turned frosty, and she immediately pressed down on Yu Qianchou. She exerted force and snorted coldly, You actually dare to scold me? We are not outside. I have to give Senior Bai face and help you. I misjudged. Nongzhu's eyes were wide open and he was sweating. He didn't expect his daughter to be so strong. He immediately shouted to Ziyi, Ziyi, what are you doing? Get down. Ziyi looked up and saw her master staring at her from the roof in the middle of the island. It seemed to be the first time her master scolded her in such a loud voice. She stuck out her tongue and quickly slid down to sit next to Yu Qianchou. However, she still kicked the swindlers but unwillingly. Yu Qianchou was in pain. He covered his mouth and sat up. He was afraid of disturbing his master, so he didn't dare to cry out loud. However, it didn't stop him from staring at Ziyi with extreme hatred. Nongzhu was sweating profusely. He wiped his forehead subconsciously. It seemed that he had been worried that his daughter would be bullied by Yu Qianchou. Now it seemed that he didn't know who would be bullied. He really worried too much. Liar. Who told you not to tell? You deserve it. Ziyi snorted and immediately stared back with her eyes. Fine. You win. I'll give your master some face this time. If there's a next time I'll shoot you. Yu Qianchou warned in a serious tone. Shoot me dead. Ziyi pondered for a moment and immediately thought of the spear that Yu Qianchou had lent to Dongfang Chonggao to challenge. It was indeed very powerful. Pausing for a moment he said, Dragon-slaying spear? Don't think that I can't tell. What dragon-slaying spear? It's the same as those two broadswords. It's definitely something that you condensed from black fire to deceive people. Others may be afraid, but I'm not. Regardless of whether she was afraid or not from her words, it could be seen that this woman had been cooped up in the southern sea purple bamboo forest for too long. She lacked knowledge, but she was not stupid. After knowing what happened to Yu Qianchou's black flying sword, he immediately thought of where the saber and spear came from. Yu Qianchou's face was filled with a sinister smile as he said, The Dragon Slayer spear is nothing. My hidden treasured spear specializes in killing women. I'm warning you, don't provoke me in the future. Otherwise, don't blame me for not giving face to your master. I'll kill you then. How dare you take advantage of my daughter? Nongzhu's expression twitched. She was not afraid of disturbing the person in the room and distracting him. Nongzhu wanted to kill Yu Qianqiu right now. You still have treasures? Ziyi's eyes lit up and she immediately became interested. She looked at him from head to toe and a naive smile appeared on her face. She moved closer to him and pulled on his sleeve as if she was begging, "Take out your spear and let me see it. Now take it out." Yu Qianqiu looked around in the beautiful weather. When he saw the innocent pretty face again, he subconsciously shrank to the side as if he had seen a poisonous snake. He hurriedly got rid of his sleeve, cupped one hand in the other before his chest and begged for mercy. "Miss Yi, I was wrong. I was talking nonsense. Please don't take it seriously." "You lied to me?" Ziyi stared at him and then shouted in a low voice, "Liar." She kicked the side of Yu Qianqiu's buttocks again. He asked for it. Yu Qianqiu did not dare to complain at all. He immediately got up, ran around the lake with his tail between his legs and ran away with his tail between his legs. Today he found that although this woman seemed to be an idiot, she was actually his nemesis. She actually wanted him to show his spear in broad daylight. "Oh my. There are 2 masters in the Huashan realm on the island. I'm not that shameless." Ziyi saw that he ran away, but it seemed that she still did not want to let him go. She was about to follow up and kick him again. When she just stood up, she heard Nongzhu's voice in her ear. "Ziyi, my good disciple, stay here, okay? You will disturb Elder Bai if you continue to make trouble." Hearing that she would disturb Elder Bai, Ziyi sat down embarrassedly. However, she still stared at Yu Qianqiu, who was running away in a wretched manner, unwillingly. Nongzhu was really speechless looking at the 2 little enemies who were separated. Now he even suspected that Yu Qianqiu was bullied by Ziyi in this way during the time he was out. Thinking that Ziyi was spoiled by him since she was a child, he was afraid that the truth was not far from his guess. At this time, Nongzhu looked at the back of Yu Qianqiu, who was in the Huashan realm, and faintly sympathized with him. This guy even dared to fight against her, who was in the Huashan realm in the 9th Netherworld cave, but now he was beaten up by Ziyi. It was not easy. The victim, Yu Qianqiu, found a place with lush water plants by the lake and quietly laid down. He pulled out a blade of grass and held it in his mouth. He rested his head on his arms and looked at the clear and crystalline surface of the lake thoughtfully. After being messed around by Ziyi, he couldn't help but think of Furong, who was far away on Fuxian Island. Although this girl was on Fuxian Island and there were many people around, she was like Ziyi. She had no playmates and grew up alone. The difference between Ziyi and Ziyi was that Ziyi had a father who loved her dearly, so her personality was quite cheerful. That girl's personality was still very closed off. Only when she saw him would she become cheerful and rely on him. "I can't leave that girl alone on Fuxian Island any longer. She'll be bored to death if she stays here for too long. It's time to bring her out to broaden her horizons." Just as Yu Qianqiu silently made this decision in his heart, he suddenly heard rustling sounds and could faintly smell the familiar faint fragrance of a virgin. He turned his head and saw Ziyi sitting over as if nothing had happened. "What are you looking at? There's a lot of grass here, it's comfortable to sit." Ziyi said a reason that even she couldn't convince herself. In order to cover up the awkwardness, she brutally pulled out the grass in Yu Qianqiu's mouth and then laid down beside him. Unknowingly, the blade of grass was in her mouth again. She didn't know what was going on. When she sat there alone just now, she felt inexplicably uncomfortable. As soon as she got close to Yu Qianqiu and smelled his scent, she felt at ease. Nongzhu stared blankly at the 2 people lying side by the lake. The expression on his face was unpredictable, sometimes happy and sometimes worried. His daughter's actions caused him to come to a sudden realization. After coming to a realization, he felt a faint sadness. At this moment there was only one thought in his mind. His daughter had long grown up. The person who should protect her should no longer be him, but her man. The majestic aura in the house suddenly surged rapidly, and it was quite restless. Nongzhu, who was indulging in flights of fancy, suddenly woke up. He could clearly feel that the unparalleled aura in the house seemed to be about to blow up the whole house. Even with Bai Changchun's cultivation, it was difficult for him to suppress the aura. Could there be an accident? Could it be that there was something wrong with the elixir? Nongzhu was shocked. His eyes were like a sharp knife, fiercely shooting at Yu Qianqiu, who was lying by the lake. If there was really something wrong with the elixir, Nongzhu was bound to kill Yu Qianqiu in the next moment. Suddenly, the restless aura inside quickly calmed down, and then quickly converged into the body of the person in the house, turning into an excited, irrepressible roar that shook the sky. Ow! The long roar went straight to the sky, and the floating clouds in the sky began to disperse like cotton. A seemingly tangible sound wave spread far and wide in all directions. The whole Xianxia island was faintly shaking, and the vegetation on the island was shaking violently. Nongzhu was surprised and delighted. He forcibly stabilized the surrounding houses with his great cultivation, otherwise, they would have been shattered by Changchun's roar. He knew that the elixir must have played a miraculous role in prolonging one's life. Otherwise, with Bai Changchun's mentality, he would not be so excited. When Bai Changchun showed his power, how could Yu Qianqiu and Zi still lie down? They had already jumped up and covered their ears with their hands. However, the roar was extremely penetrating and they could not block it even if they wanted to. The two of them were shaken to the point that their faces turned pale and they were on the verge of collapsing. The lake at the side had long become a pot of porridge, like a pot of boiling water. A large area of water was jumping non-stop, and dead fish were constantly floating on the surface of the lake. In the demon ghost region, the demons and ghosts were terrified. Those who could hear the roar all looked in the direction of Xianxia Island in horror. After a long time, the roar stopped and the surroundings fell into a deathly silence. The Xianxia Island was in a mess, as if it had been blown by a typhoon. Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was the weakest. At this time he finally let out a painful groan and fell by the lake. He almost rolled his eyes. Zi also let go of her ears. Her face was pale and she was gasping for breath. "Old Bai, what are you shouting for? Your disciple has been killed by you." Nongzhu stood on the roof and shouted angrily. He teleported to the side of the two of them. Seeing that Zi was fine, he bent down and pressed his palm on Yu Qianqiu's chest. Yu Qianqiu, who had sunk into a semi-conscious state, only felt a clear stream flowing from his chest to his limbs and bones. His chaotic blood and qi were quickly smoothed out, and the buzzing sound in his ears that he couldn't get rid of gradually faded away. He finally breathed out and woke up. His face was still filled with lingering fear. He really wanted to teleport back to Utopia, but he knew that it was not the right time. He could only grit his teeth and endure it. Zi also regained her calmness. Her face was pale and she sat cross-legged to recuperate. Nongzhu kept cursing, but when she turned around she realized that the person she was cursing had already appeared behind her. Bai Changchun quietly arrived. Looking at his disciple lying on the ground, a faint smile hung on his usually calm face. His clear cheeks were still faintly red. Nongzhu approached and looked up and down. She asked excitedly, "It's done? How's the effect of the 7 orifices exquisite pill? Does it really have the effect of increasing one's lifespan by 150 years? For people who had reached their level of cultivation, they could be said to know every change in their bodies like the back of their hands. Naturally, they were clear about the changes in the body of the pill. Bai Changchun nodded slightly and said, "This pill indeed has the miraculous effect of seizing the fortune of heaven and earth, and the refining technique of the person who refined this pill can be said to be extraordinary, almost increasing the efficacy of this pill by 30%. If I'm not wrong, this old man can still live for nearly another 200 years. Chapter 445. Tut tut. Nongzhu was amazed and circled around him several times. With more than 2,000 years of experience, Bai Changchun could tell the quality of any elixir in his mouth. There was no doubt that he was right. He is half dead. How can his elixir refining skills reach an extraordinary level? Nongzhu glanced at Yu Qianqiu on the ground and asked incredulously, "You're the one who's half dead?" Yu Qianqiu looked at Nongzhu with resentment and quickly got up from the ground. Bai Changchun knew what was good and what was bad. He would not argue with Nongzhu on this matter. The expression on his face had calmed down. He asked Yu Qianqiu, "Didn't you say that you have an idea this time? Tell me what it is." The surroundings were in a mess and did not attract his attention. Instead, he took Yu Qianqiu's matter to heart. It seemed that Yu Qianqiu's elixir was not given in vain. The weight and timing of the gift were just right. Thinking of the conversation that was interrupted when he just arrived, Yu Qianqiu calmed down and replied solemnly, "Master, this is what I think. I can't please both sides in the cultivation world of Wuxia. Instead of this, it is better to go deep into the enemy's territory and go to other countries outside of Wuxia. Maybe I can play a bigger role there." Hearing this, Nongzhu was stunned. When she came to her senses, she immediately sneered and said, I think you really don't know what's good for you. Your master made a big fuss and made Wuxia a forbidden area for masters of Wuxia. That's why you can be so arrogant. Hehe. You have nothing better to do. You want to jump out of the circle and go to other people's old nest. Little brat, let me tell you, they won't be as polite to you as me and your master. They can take your life with just a lift of their hands. Don't think that you're really that powerful. The experts in this world are far more powerful than you can imagine. No matter how powerful they are, they can't be more powerful than my master. Yu Qianzhou retorted disapprovingly. At the same time, he flattered his master. Hey. Good. Nongzhu turned around and sneered at Bai Chongqun. Old Bai, your disciple doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He needs to be disciplined. You have to take care of it. Don't create a short-lived ghost. Bai Chongqun frowned. In terms of overall strength, the Chinese cultivation world was at a disadvantage in the conflict between the Chinese cultivation world and the cultivation world of other countries. The reason why he asked Yu Qianzhou to help the Chinese cultivation world was to train him. Now Yu Qianzhou wanted to jump out of the circle he had drawn and was willing to take greater risks. This was beyond his expectations. However, it was undeniable that the more arduous and dangerous a place was, the more it could temper a person. After weighing the pros and cons for a long time, Bai Chongqun slowly opened his eyes and stared at Yu Qianzhou with his burning eyes. He said indifferently, I won't interfere with your choice. But you have to think it through. If you leave the circle of Chinese cultivation world, you will be in great danger. If something unexpected happens, even if I want to save you, I'm afraid it will be too late. Nongzhu was stunned and said in surprise, Old Bai, what do you mean? At this time, Zi had already recovered her qi circulation. She opened her eyes wide and pricked up her ears to listen. Master, you are wise. Yu Qianzhou bowed and said, Although my cultivation is not high, I have fought against 2 masters at the last stage of nature's test without being defeated. I don't think I have disgraced your reputation as the first master in the world. Master, you are the idol of your disciple. However, there is no reason for a disciple to hide under your protection for a lifetime. If one day I want to be like you, Master, I will be at the top of the cultivation world and look down on all the others. There was no doubt that the arrogance in his words shocked Nongzhu, who lived a free and unfettered life. Bai Chongqun's eyes were full of admiration. Yu Qianzhou's words touched his heart. With such a disciple, what more could he ask for? He immediately nodded and said with a smile, As I said, I won't interfere with your business. Just do what you want. This was equivalent to agreeing to Yu Qianzhou's request to leave Wuxia. Yu Qianzhou immediately bowed and said, Thank you, Master. Lunatics, one big and one small, 2 lunatics. Nongzhu had no words to describe them. She pointed at them and scolded them. Ziyi's eyes were full of splendor. Not only did Yu Qianzhou want to look down on all the others, she also admired Bai Chongqun very much. She also wanted to be as powerful as Bai Chongqun. She was looking forward to going out and taking risks. Maybe one day she would become a peerless master like Elder Bai. After noticing her daughter's abnormal expression, Nongzhu was shocked and knew something was wrong. She immediately said in a low voice, Old Bai, it's not that I don't want to cooperate with you, but it's too dangerous for him to go out. He may lose his life at any time. I can't let Zi take risks with him to realize his dream of reaching the top of the world. If he wants to go, let him go alone. Don't get my disciple involved. Hearing this, Ziyi's cheerful mood suddenly dropped. She pulled Nongzhu's sleeve and begged, Master, please do me a favor. Shut up. Nongzhu swung her sleeve and shouted angrily, This is no place for you to speak. Is it that I can't control you? You even dare to disobey me? Since she was a child, it was the first time for Zi to see her master being so fierce to her. She turned around and looked at Bai Chongqun, begging for help. Elder Bai, please help me persuade my master. Shut up. It's useless no matter who persuades me. I will never agree. Unless you kill me now and walk out by stepping on my dead body. Nongzhu was almost roaring. Zi had never seen him like this before. She immediately shut up and looked at Yu Qianzhou from time to time, looking very pitiful. It's none of my business. Yu Qianzhou immediately lowered his head and counted the grass. 1, 2, 3, 4. He didn't want to take this girl with him anymore. In order to keep his privacy, it was inconvenient to do many things with this girl by his side. Bai Chongqun understood Nongzhu's mood at this time. The purpose of making Ziyi come out was to protect Yu Qianqiu. However, it seemed that even he had underestimated Yu Qianqiu's ability. Now Yu Qianqiu was going to jump out of the cultivation world of Wuxia. He would face the real masters of the world. If those in the soul-forming stage wanted to attack Yu Qianqiu, Ziyi would not be able to protect him. Therefore it was no longer necessary to take Ziyi with him. If anything happened, the relationship between him and Nongzhu would come to an end. Bai Changchun turned to face Yu Qianqiu and stared at him for a long time. Suddenly he said, "Be careful when you are alone from now on." As soon as he said this, Ziyi's hope of joining him was completely cut off. Hearing this, Ziyi was completely listless. She knew there was no hope. Nongzhu was relieved. She looked at Bai Changchun as if saying, "Old guy, you are sensible." However, it was these words that made Yu Qianqiu inexplicably feel his nose turn sour. He gritted his teeth and stiffly replied, "This disciple will follow master's instructions." Bai Changchun looked at him and smiled. He passed by them and walked slowly to the lake. He looked at the sky and the earth. His clothes were fluttering in the wind. He stared at it for a long time with his hands clasped behind his back. The few of them looked at the back of this thin figure standing against the wind. No one disturbed him and they didn't know what he was looking at or what he was thinking, but they could taste a kind of loneliness from his back. It was the loneliness of being invincible and unable to find an opponent. It had been more than 1,000 years. Yu Qianqiu. Bai Changchun suddenly said with his back facing them. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He didn't know what he was going to say. He hurriedly walked behind him and saluted, "Yes, master. Although you are full of confidence this time, it is an indisputable fact that your cultivation is shallow. There is no doubt that the water incantation and fire incantation are mysterious. However, with your current cultivation you can't exert too much power. It is really worrying when facing so many masters. I have been cultivating for many years. I want to sum up a little experience. Maybe it will be helpful to you. Are you willing to learn?" Bai Changchun said calmly, but it was no less than a thunder. Hearing this, not only Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi but also Nongzhu's eyes lit up. Nongzhu knew that this old guy treasured his knowledge and never taught anyone anything. However, this old guy's ability was beyond doubt. What he was going to teach must be extraordinary. "I'm willing to learn." Yu Qianqiu hurriedly saluted. He thought, "It's better to give elixirs. Finally, I managed to get something out of your hands." Nongzhu, who pretended to be hostile just now, rubbed her hands and leaned over happily. She smiled and said, "Old Bai, what do you want to teach? I have good taste. Since you have made it, why don't you let me have a look? Maybe I can pick out some flaws for you." Despicable and shameless. Yu Qianqiu looked at him with unfriendly eyes, as if the meat in his mouth was about to be snatched away. Ziyi, who was at the side, stuck out her tongue and licked her lips. Her eyes were sparkling. Elder Bai's peerless magic. As a bystander, Yu Qianqiu saw it clearly. He was quite disdainful. He cursed in his heart. They are indeed father and daughter. Their behavior is exactly the same. Bai Changchun ignored Nongzhu. He turned to Yu Qianqiu and said, "I need to meditate in seclusion for 3 days. You and Miss Mu tidy up the island and come find me in 3 days." "Yes, master." Yu Qianqiu suppressed his excitement and bowed. When he stood up again, he found that Bai Changchun was gone. He looked at the big house in the center of the island and suddenly winked. What kind of peerless magic will he teach me? Anyway, I don't want to learn the sunflower manual. Alas. I'm looking forward to it. His extremely wretched expression, as if he was suffering from paranoia, made the father and daughter look down on him. Nongzhu slapped him on the back of the head and sneered, "You haven't learned the skill yet and you're already thinking about it. What a shame." Yu Qianqiu staggered and looked back at her with a sarcastic look. But after thinking about it, he felt relieved. Damn. This old handsome guy must be jealous of me. I won't stoop to your level. Then he shook his head and walked toward the plantation. As he walked, he said, "Alas. Even master had to meditate in seclusion for 3 days to summarize it. I really don't know if I can learn such a mysterious magic art. So painful. So heart-wrenching. So painful. God." Chapter 446. The muscles on Nongzhu's face twitched. She wanted to grab him and beat him up, but she resisted the urge and winked at Ziyi. The father and daughter were indeed connected. Ziyi quickly understood her master's intention and chased after Yu Qianqiu. she accompanied him and said with a smile, "Yu Qianqiu, what kind of magic do you think Elder Bai will teach you?" "Hey, Master's cultivation is unfathomable. It's not something we can guess. I will learn whatever he teaches," Yu Qianqiu said solemnly. Ziyi's skin was indeed thinner than Nongzhu's. She asked in a roundabout way, but she didn't directly state her intentions. Yu Qianqiu happily pretended to be confused and chatted with her. The two of them went directly to the plantation. The mess in the garden made the two of them dumbfounded. The originally bright red seedlings of the deficient flame profound fruit were now lying all over the place. Not a single one could be found. It was obvious that they had all been destroyed by Changchun's roar. Miss Mu stood in the garden with a pale face. Her eyes were dull and she seemed to have lost her soul. Not to mention Yu Qianqiu, even Ziyi had heard from Nongzhu that the deficient flame profound fruit was prepared for the Nanming ancestors' mount. It was of great significance to Bai Changchun. She didn't know what would happen if Bai Changchun knew that all the deficient flame profound fruit had been destroyed. A mere Miss Mu couldn't bear Bai Changchun's anger. Yu Qianqiu walked into the messy garden and walked to Miss Mu's side. He sighed slightly, knowing that this woman was frightened. He patted her shoulder and shouted, "Miss Mu." Miss Mu suddenly turned around and saw Yu Qianqiu. She wanted to cry but had no tears. She shouted, "Mister. Don't worry, this has nothing to do with you. I will explain to Master and plead on your behalf. I think Master won't make things difficult for you." Yu Qianqiu comforted her. Hearing him plead on her behalf, Miss Mu immediately thanked him profusely. Although she was still frightened, at least she had a chance to live. "Don't think too much. Master wants us to tidy up the island." Yu Qianqiu called out to her and the two of them immediately got to work. Perhaps Miss Mu was thinking of atoning for her sins, so she put in extra effort. As for Ziyi, who was following him around, he needed her help. It would be a waste if he did not use her. Yu Qianqiu had tricked her into going with him. Now he had another good helper. The three of them worked together. 3 days later, Yu Qianqiu could not wait to come to the front of the big house. He suppressed the excitement on his face and walked in with his hands clasped behind his back. Bai Changchun held a jade archive in his hand. Nongzhu and her father kept glancing back and forth at it, as if they were trying to decipher its mysteries. When he saw Yu Qianqiu come in, Bai Changchun loosened his grip. The jade archive slowly floated up and was delivered to the former. With a pious expression, Yu Qianqiu took the archive with both hands. He bowed and said, "Thank you, Master." He glanced at Nongzhu and her father, then deftly stuffed it into his storage pouch. Outside, Miss Mu walked to the front door with a miserable expression. She lowered her head and knelt down in front of Bai Changchun. Everyone in the house turned to look at her. She was summoned by Yu Qianqiu. Naturally, Yu Qianqiu had to make an appearance. He was also a little nervous, but he still braced himself and reported, "Master, the garden that Miss Mu was taking care of was destroyed by your long whistle 3 days ago. She has come to ask for forgiveness from you." Bai Changchun frowned. He quickly released his divine sense and had a clear picture of the garden. Although he knew that he was the one who destroyed it, his expression still darkened. His gaze was so intense that Miss Mu couldn't help but tremble. Yu Qianqiu knew that things were not looking good. A monster king was not even as good as an ant in the old man's eyes. If he didn't say anything, Miss Mu would probably die. Hence, he promptly bowed and pleaded, "Master, I was the one who brought Miss Mu to Obedient Island. I didn't take care of the profound fruit garden and destroyed Master's profound fruit. I chose the wrong person, so I can't escape responsibility. Master, please punish me as well." Hearing this, Miss Mu bowed and kowtowed. Although the expression on her face couldn't be seen clearly, it could be seen that her delicate body was trembling slightly, as if she was sobbing softly. To be honest, not to mention Bai Changchun, even Nongzhu didn't think much of Miss Mu, a mere monster king. Usually when they saw her, they only thought that she was doing odd jobs on Obedient Island. Now, seeing Yu Qianqiu pleading in a disguised way, Nongzhu couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Others might not know, but Nongzhu knew that Old Man Bai had clearly decided that Yu Qianqiu would be the successor of the demon ghost region's torturer. Yu Qianqiu was pleading on behalf of this monster king. Obviously, the relationship between the two was not shallow. Although this monster king was just doing odd jobs now, once Yu Qianqiu became the torturer in the future, this monster king's status in the demon ghost region would definitely rise. Maybe he would be above everyone else. With this thought, Nongzhu couldn't help but look at Miss Mu a few more times. Subconsciously she had already begun to take her seriously. Bai Changchun's eyes paused on Yu Qianchou's face for a while, then moved to Miss Mu who was kneeling on the ground. His face returned to normal and he said to her, "This is none of your business. You can leave now." Hearing this, Yu Qianchou was instantly relieved. This meant that Bai Changchun wouldn't pursue the matter further. Miss Mu didn't say anything. She just kowtowed a few times then stood up and slowly retreated. When she turned around to leave, her eyes swept across Yu Qianchou, full of infinite gratitude. Yu Qianchou didn't say anything. After all, he and this Monster King had a physical relationship. Although he didn't do anything out of line, he did serve him wholeheartedly. Just based on this, he should help him. Ahem. Nongzhu cleared his throat, breaking the silence in the room. He crossed his hands, turned to face Bai Changchun and snorted coldly, "Old Bai, you can't be like this. My Zi listened to your orders and protected your disciple for such a long time. Even if she didn't do anything meritorious, she still worked hard. As an elder, you should at least do something for her." "What do you want me to do?" Bai Changchun asked calmly. "Do you think I'll let you go through so much trouble?" Nongzhu turned to Yu Qianchou, tilted his chin and said, "Just use what he has. That magic art you gave him just now, let Zi bask in the glory and learn it." "Damn it. Old people who don't die are thieves." Yu Qianchou squinted at Nongzhu as if he was guarding against a thief. Bai Changchun said expressionlessly, "That won't do. That's for my disciple." "That's easy. Worst comes to worst, Zi can also be your disciple. I won't have any objections." Nongzhu turned around and shouted, "Zi, come and be my disciple." Zi was stunned. She was a little suspicious and asked pitifully, "Master, don't you want me any more?" "Nonsense." Nongzhu stared at her and reprimanded, "Isn't it good to have two masters? With two masters supporting you, who would dare to bully you in the future?" Yu Qianchou looked at this guy and was speechless. It was true that the more handsome a man was, the more shameless he was. The more handsome a man was, the more annoying he was. Zi hesitantly walked to Bai Changchun. Although she really wanted to be Bai Changchun's disciple, she always felt it was inappropriate. But before she opened her mouth, Bai Changchun shook his head and said, "I don't accept female disciples." His words made Zi stiff. "Old Bai." Nongzhu was about to act shamelessly, but Bai Changchun raised his hand and interrupted her. "You don't have to be my disciple. It's not impossible to learn, but I have a condition." "What condition?" Nongzhu asked carefully, as if she was worried that there was a trap in front of her. Chapter 447. Bai Changchun didn't beat around the bush and said directly, "You know, before I go to the Eastern Holy Land, I need Nanming to refine a suitable spiritual treasure for me. Now that the deficient flame profound fruit has been destroyed, I'm afraid he can't come. If you can help me get him here, Zi will have a share of this incantation. Of course, the premise is that he's willing to help me refine the treasure. That old guy has a strange temper. I'm afraid he won't give me face." Nongzhu pinched her chin and thought. Suddenly, her expression turned fierce and she said, "Why are you being so polite to him? Just tie him up. He's no match for you." "Do I need you to remind me if it works?" Bai Changchun asked indifferently. Hehe. Nongzhu smiled awkwardly and said, "That's true. That guy doesn't listen to persuasion or force. It's useless to tie him up. Maybe we'll tie him up and worship him, let alone refine anything." Then her face turned bitter and she spread out her hands. "I don't know what to do. Old Bai, you're clearly making things difficult for me." A dark shadow flashed out of Bai Changchun's storage bag and floated in front of Nongzhu. It was dark and dull. It was the sky-swallowing beast's fang that Yu Qianchou sawed off from the underworld gate. Nongzhu slapped her forehead and suddenly said, "How could I forget about this thing? Take it and I'll make sure Nanming follows me obediently. There's no time to lose. I'll go now and come back early." She grabbed it in her hand, looked at it and stuffed it into her storage bag. Just as she turned around, she stopped and said, "Old Bai, let's make this clear first. I only care about bringing Nanming here. As for whether he agrees to refine the treasure for you or not, it's not something I can force." Bai Changchun neither agreed nor objected. He just sat there without saying a word. Nongzhu smiled and said, "If you don't say anything, I'll take it as a yes. Don't regret it when the time comes. I'll go to Xianxia Island and bring Nanming here." As soon as she finished speaking, she disappeared in the blink of an eye. Outside there was the sound of rapid flying. Zi looked outside and was slightly stunned. She also knew that her master had made this trip because of her. Master, what kind of person is that patriarch Nanming? He didn't even give face to you? Yu Qianqiu asked, puzzled. This was not the first time he had heard someone mention ancestor Nanming. Even the #1 expert in the world, Bai Chongqun, had to spend a lot of effort to plant the deficient flame profound fruit in order to cater to this person. Bai Chongqun now had high hopes for Yu Qianqiu. Naturally, he would not be stingy in teaching him about the stories of these top figures in the cultivation world. He said slowly, there are 5 great people in the cultivation world today and Nanming is one of them. This person's cultivation level has already reached the mid-stage of deity transformation. Although his cultivation level isn't the highest when it comes to tool refinement, if he says he's #2, no one would dare to say they're #1. He's the #1 tool refinement expert in the cultivation world. 5 great men of the cultivation world? Was there such a thing? I'm afraid you're one of them. Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, no wonder Senior Nongzhu said he has a strange temper. It turns out that he's arrogant because of his talent. You can't say that. Bai Chongqun shook his head slightly and said, since the ancient war there hasn't been a tool refinement expert in the cultivation world who can refine spirit treasures. Nanming's sudden appearance attracted many people's covetous eyes. They all wanted to take him under their command, and there were even people who threatened and tempted him. Nanming could be said to be annoyed, so he lived in seclusion on Xianxia Island. It's very difficult for ordinary people to invite him. I've also helped him solve some problems. In order to return the favor, he refined a treasure for me once. Unfortunately, the success rate of refining a high-grade spirit treasure is too low, so he failed. Yu Qianqiu secretly guessed that the so-called problem solved was probably to scare off those people who threatened and tempted ancestor Nanming. Otherwise, why would he need to ask the #1 expert in the world to solve the problem? This master is a super expert in fighting. Since it's so difficult to invite the ancestor Nanming, then why was master able to invite him again after planting the deficient flame profound fruit? Is it just because his mount likes to eat the deficient flame profound fruit? Yu Qianqiu asked the doubt in his heart. Bai Chongqun explained with unprecedented patience. Because the last refining failed, he felt that he hadn't repaid my favor. However, he couldn't break his own rules and easily make a move, so he gave me some deficient flame profound fruit seeds. He asked me to gather all the refining materials, and when the deficient flame profound fruit ripens, I can invite him again. There are 3 chances in total, and no matter whether the refining is successful or not, the favor he owes me will be written off. Then Senior Nongzhu was able to invite the ancestor Nanming over with just a beast-tooth pride from the underworld gate? Yu Qianqiu asked respectfully. It sounded like he was humbly asking for advice. Zi listened quietly at the side, not daring to disturb them. In front of Senior Bai, she didn't dare to behave too atrociously. Bai Chongqun also answered without hesitation, this is the rule he set. Whoever can give him precious materials that can move his heart can invite him out of Xianxia Island. As for the grade of the treasure he is invited to refine, it depends on whether the materials given to him are sufficient. I see. Yu Qianqiu was deep in thought. Suddenly he remembered the 5 great men of the cultivation world. He couldn't help but ask again, Master, you mentioned the 5 great men of the cultivation world. Besides the ancestor Nanming, who are the other 4? Hearing this, Zi looked at Bai Chongqun with a strange light in her eyes. Obviously, she knew that one of the 5 great men of the cultivation world was the thin old man in front of her. Bai Chongqun said slowly, besides Nanming of Xianxia Island, there is also Wen Lanfeng of Baiwan Nation and Lu Yanqing of Lingfang Valley. There is also the world's #1 fortune teller, Great Master Tianzhu. He was the one who predicted that the star orb would appear in the Chinese cultivation world. However, he has already passed away. To be precise, there are only 4 of the 5 great men left. He stopped here, not saying the 5th one. In fact, Yu Qianqiu had already guessed it was him. He was definitely too embarrassed to say that he was one of the 5 great men. Zi stuck out her tongue and said to Yu Qianqiu playfully, the last one is the leader of the 5 great men, Senior Bai himself. I've already guessed it. Master is the world's #1 expert. If even you can't be one of them, then I'm afraid the 5 great men don't deserve their reputation. Yu Qianqiu flattered him again. Then he turned to stare at Zi and frowned, so you already knew. Why haven't I heard you mention it before? Ziyi glared at him and immediately retorted, You didn't ask me. I thought you already knew. Who knew that you didn't even know about this? Okay, you're knowledgeable. Yu Qianzhou didn't want to argue with her in front of his master, so he asked, Then tell me why Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing can be one of the 5 great men in the cultivation world. Ziyi glanced at Bai Chongqun. Seeing that there was nothing strange about him, she immediately said with a hint of boasting, Bai Wan Nation's Wen Lanfeng is also a late-stage soul transformation expert, and not just any late-stage soul transformation expert. He is ranked second in the cultivation world after Senior Bai, second only to Senior Bai. He is also one of the 5 great men of the cultivation world because of his extraordinary cultivation. Wen Lanfeng of Baiwan Nation? Yu Qianzhou secretly remembered this person. In the soul formation stage, people who could reach a cultivation level second only to Bai Chongqun must be extraordinary. He had to be careful in the future. Speaking of this, Ziyi suddenly had an expression of admiration on her face. This made Yu Qianzhou very curious. He thought to himself, could there be someone more admired by this girl than Bai Chongqun? Ziyi continued in high spirits. Senior Lu Yanqing of Lingfang Valley is a female senior. Her cultivation has also reached the middle stage of soul formation. She's the best healer in the cultivation world. It's said that as long as someone is still breathing, she can save them. And what? Yu Qianzhou asked suspiciously. He thought to himself, is this girl a fan of Lu Yanqing? Although I haven't seen Senior Lu Yanqing, I heard that she's the most beautiful woman in the world. Countless experts in the cultivation world admire her appearance and pursue her, but none of them can enter her eyes. Even Senior Wen Lanfeng, one of the 5 great men, fought with Senior Bai for her. Ziyi stuck out her tongue at this point. She looked at Bai Chongqun and didn't dare to continue. Yu Qianzhou saw that she wanted to say something but stopped. Coupled with the words she hadn't finished before, he suddenly became suspicious. He thought to himself, could it be that the most beautiful woman in the world is so beautiful that the number 1 and number 2 experts are jealous of each other? So the 2 peerless experts fought over a woman? F***ck. This news is a little too shocking. Yu Qianzhou's eyes flickered as he glanced at his master. He didn't dare to look him in the eye, but he didn't dare to continue asking lest he touched Old Man Bai's sore spot. However, his heart was full of guesses. It seemed that the most beautiful woman in the world wasn't with Old Man Bai. Could it be that Old Man Bai, the number 1 expert in the world, couldn't win against the number 2 expert in the world for the most beautiful woman in the world? What a piece of gossip. When Bai Chongqun saw Yu Qianzhou's wretched and lascivious expression, he immediately knew that his disciple was thinking beyond the clouds. He immediately said to Ziyi, he doesn't know much about this level. Since you've already said it, tell him the whole story. Otherwise he'll only know a little and make wild guesses. Yes. Ziyi bowed. Since Old Man Bai had spoken, she had nothing to worry about. She continued to say to Yu Qianzhou, I heard that Senior Wen Lanfeng is one of the craziest pursuers of Senior Lu Yanqing, but Senior Lu Yanqing doesn't like him. Until one time, Senior Lu was pestered by Senior Wen to the point where she couldn't do anything. She said to Senior Wen that as long as you can defeat the world's number 1 expert Bai Chongqun, I'll become your Daoist companion. Yu Qianzhou was dumbfounded. It was completely different from his previous guess. It turned out that the world's number 2 expert was a love-struck fool. Needless to say, it must be that Bai Chongqun had inexplicably fought with this love-struck fool. Ziyi secretly glanced at Bai Chongqun and stuck out her tongue again. She said, I heard from my master that after Senior Wen heard Senior Lu's words, he immediately sought out Old Man Bai for a duel. Old Man Bai felt it was a little strange at that time. After learning of Senior Wen's intention, he suddenly flew into a rage and attacked mercilessly. As a result, Senior Wen was seriously injured in less than 10 moves. If it wasn't for my master stopping him, I'm afraid Senior Wen wouldn't have been able to keep his life. After that, I heard that Senior Wen never went to find Senior Lu again and has been cultivating in Baiwan country.